And he looked in control. He looked like he knew what he was doing. And that's obviously something that you want to see from the number 2 overall pick. And even just seeing in the team periods, just seeing his comfortability in the pocket. And, at times last year when you'd watch Howell out here and other guys, it just was a little bit chaotic and you didn't know what was going on. And they're throwing the ball waywardly because they're a little bit flustered. You didn't see that from Jaden. Were there some plays he'd like back and he missed some throws? Sure. But I thought overall he looked in control, he looked confident, and I think that's impressive for a kid that, he hasn't been playing NFL football that long. He's been in the building just for a little bit. And, hearing Allegretti after practice basically say he gets in at 6:30 every morning and Jaden's already beat him in and he's darn near ready for practice at that time, it just shows that this guy's work ethic is A1, and it's really cool to see it kind of in person and get to see his release is really efficient. Like, everything about him looks like a pro quarterback, and so it's encouraging to see at this point of the year.
No doubt. I think that's the thing that, we've talked about on Take Command. I've obviously talked about it here on the show. That's the thing that really stands out to me is his composure. And I think today was, relatively speaking, one of his – I don't want to put out the quote. I don't want people, our website folks or anyone else to be like, oh, Craig said it's his worst day. But, relatively speaking, he looked more rookie-ish today with some of the missed reads and some of the missed throws than he has previously. Because I think I've been out here for every practice of the spring so far. And just, the ball hit the ground sometimes because he missed throws. There's one to Ertz that he made the right read and he missed the throw. Yeah. That happens. It's pro football. The defense is paid too, but it's never because he loses his composure. Situational awareness, in the timed type drills, 2-minute stuff, I thought he looked good. It was funny because I was chuckling when Linnell talked about the play of the day with Doc and Russell being this really tremendous athletic play in terms of a rollout. Get out, throw a bomb down. Apparently, Diami caught it with one hand. I couldn't see because we were on the defensive sideline, and I couldn't see the actual catch. But apparently, it was a really nice catch by Diami. But the play was a sack. And so, there is a pocket awareness thing that as the rush becomes real, he's obviously going to have to be more aware. But also, watching him in college, that he can feel that and take off and run. That said, the pressure-to-sack ratio was high. So, is that an issue? We're not going to know that until we get into the season. But it's interesting as they've continued to add more and more. The defense feels like it is the better side of the football right now, and I think a lot of that just has to do with that more so than it is anything about some kind of reflection of Jaden Daniels.
Well, and he's going to have to learn because Joe Witt Jr. and those guys were dialing some stuff up, and it was pretty obvious just by the way they went about constructing their team in the offseason that they were going to be a more aggressive defense as opposed to sitting back. They were going to blitz. They're going to bring guys all over. They're going to bring 5 and 6, and you don't know who's coming. That was pretty obvious. But even just at points today, you see Luvu come in. You see Jamin Davis rushing off the edge. They're going to try some different things out. And so I think it's, that's an adjustment coming from college. When you've got dudes like Luvu that are very versatile, he could drop one play, he can blitz, and these guys are really effective. So it's not surprising that it's ahead. That's obviously a rookie quarterback and a pretty inexperienced room for the most part with him and Hartman and Driscoll and Mariota. So I think that there's nothing concerning, like you said. I think the big thing is I haven't seen him, so I don't have anything to base it off of. But if this was his worst day, it's not that bad, right?
No,
and he's composed.
No, definitely not. You have these days in training camp. It's just part of it is training camp, mini camp, whatever camp. And this really was a training camp style practice today. And that's apparently, I was talking to someone with the team, and apparently that is what it's going to be today, tomorrow, or very training camp style practices. And then Thursday will be a bit shorter of a day. But they actually are going to practice Thursday. Normally the third day of mini camp is it's a joke. It's already pre-written off. But what I was told is basically that Quinn told them at the start of this, those 3 days, you're going to be here. Don't book the early flight. Don't book the Wednesday night flight. Yeah. It's going to be Thursday. And what he did was kind of a handshake agreement is I'm going to give you some virtual weeks. So in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the offseason, there was 1 week where the veterans didn't have to be here. So last week was that week for them. The rookies were here. The vets were able to participate in whatever meetings and stuff they had virtually. And then, okay, hey, you're going to be back here for 3 weeks for minicamp, but we are going to take that third day on some level to be a real practice. We'll see how intense it is, but it is the kind of thing that is different and I think is more symptomatic than anything else of it being year one. They just need to do install work that it's new to everyone. There is no one that has either been here or knows the offense previously or has, obviously new teammates around them. Like, there's just not any level of continuity with anything on either side of the ball. And so to me, that's the smart move. And, the lack of like mental mistakes that seem to be happening, the smoothness with which the practice is running, I actually think is a pretty good sign of how on top of things this coaching staff is.
Well, and it shows the full buy-in, right? All these guys were here at OTAs, so they can kind of keep going. Like, it's something where they're building and building and building, and then they don't have to stop and reintegrate somebody else into it. Like, it's just building and building and building. And I think, having that with the new staff, with the players, the full buy-in, I think that's going to allow them to get to training camp. They're a full go, and hopefully it allows for a quicker start than we've seen in years past. Because I think, regardless of who starts week 1 at quarterback, like, the rest of the team also has to be ready. And I think that you're seeing that these guys are ready to roll, and they're coming in, and they're ready to rock. So I think seeing that full buy-in, seeing them stick around for that third day of camp this week, I think it's important. Dan Quinn has sent a message to these guys that they're going to work hard and they're going to do their business, and they're clearly sticking to it, and I like that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, more takeaways from day 1 of mandatory minicamp. Next on the Hoffman Show, Tobi Altizer sticking with us for most of this hour. Also, to round out the hour, my chat with Luke McCaffrey, Commanders wide receiver, of course, and brother of the Madden cover boy. Yes, we talked about Christian's Madden cover. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Michael Phillips going to hop in Tobi's chair at 5 o'clock. We got a pick 6 at 6. We got all kinds of fun stuff coming today. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app, and, of course, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Live from Commanders minicamp, It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Tobi Altizer alongside riding shotgun this first hour. So the big thing that I kind of took away from camp today, Tobi, is the turnovers continue to happen. And sometimes you look at that and that's just an offense out of sync, whatever. And I don't necessarily see it that way. Certainly there's some of it. I think that it was Mariota who threw a pick on a deep ball. Maybe it was Driscoll. It wasn't Daniels. But someone threw a pick on a deep ball today, and that was just kind of like a let's fling it and see what happens. I don't know what the situation was. For all I know, that was a fine arm punt. But it's the kind of thing where in the past, that ball feels like it hits the ground and it's nothing. And you see that. You see a tip ball later in Mariota's edition of the 2-minute drill to end practice. Ball gets tipped off. Commander in burgundy on defense comes down with it. And I just feel like that emphasis, like Del Rio always talked about emphasizing it. Every defensive coach talks about it. But there is something about the way that Joe Witt and Dan Quinn coach up turnovers and emphasize it and put guys in a position to make it, and the accountability amongst the players that they're in minicamp. We're in the spring. I know it's June, but like the results are better in June than they've been in previous Junes. Hopefully they'll be better in September, October, November, December, and Lord willing, January.
Yes.
And maybe even eventually, Tobi. The goal is eventually a February, too. But playing a game in February is a head start. We can get to the details when we get there. But if it's better in June, hopefully it translates to the season. But it certainly feels like it's better than June than it has been.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like when you go from Jack Del Rio's defense to this defense, with Jack Del Rio, he had a very solid defense. I don't know that it was a playmaking defense. And so last year, I think, with the Forbes pick, he talked about he wanted to create turnovers, and I think they got away from being the solid defense, right? And they were trying to be a playmaking defense, and that just really wasn't them. Whereas you're bringing Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn, I think they're an aggressive defense. They are a playmaking defense. So I think, in turn, you're going to not have, at times, the lapses in coverage and all these miscommunications on the back end, because I think it's built in to be a playmaking style of defense. That's why you have a Luvu, a Jeremy Chin, some of these guys that are very versatile, a Mike Sanders still that can blitz off the edge or he can cover the slot, right? So I'm intrigued by it because I think that just the style of defense itself is going to lend itself to more turnovers, and they've got the guys to do it as well. And I think the way that they're going to play is so much more aggressive that it's just going to naturally lead to those turnovers as well.
Yeah, Quinn's not talking tomorrow. He is talking on Thursday. One thing I want to ask him if I come out here on Thursday is about their philosophy on mixing and matching personnel in practice. And both, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had. It'd be much more interesting if Dan was sitting here. But about how they're rotating the quarterbacks today. Jaden seemed to be QB1. Marcus, I assume, will be QB1 tomorrow. But sometimes they have the twos go first. They're mixing and matching a lot on offense. But typically, one quarterback, for instance, today, Jaden stays with the one offensive line. So there's your headline for the day. Jaden Daniels, QB1 for today. I know Quinn also talked about that. You'll hear that clip coming up in the Pick 6. But more interesting to me, Tobi, because it's not as regimented and because there will be fluidity in the season, is how they mix and match on defense. And maybe I'm reading way too much into this because it's June and your mind has time to wander as opposed to a million things coming at you all at once that you have during the season. But I do think philosophically we talk about how do you raise the standard? How do you keep the standard, right? If you are a fourth string D lineman and all of a sudden you're out there and Bobby Wagner's behind you, because that happened today. There was guys that will not make this team in the fall that were out there on the front seven or the back seven with the first string linebackers. And then second string linebackers are out there with the starting secondary and the third string D-line, the first string D-line. And they would just mix and match. But if you've always got some ones out there and you're out there and that's your shot to play with Jonathan Allen, and that's your shot to play with especially Bobby Wagner, that's your shot to play with Jeremy Chin and whoever else you want to consider a 1DB on that back end, because they're mixing and matching those dudes like crazy. Wouldn't you want to put out your best performance? Wouldn't you feel like I have to play to their standard? And as a competitor, of course you would. And so I actually wonder, again, maybe I'm reading too much into that, and it's just kind of the numbers at each position where it's we only have 2.5 strings of linebacker, and we have 4 strings of safety. So as we rotate, they're going to get mismatched. But I wouldn't surprise me if that is something that's intentional from Quinn and Witt, that they try to keep the level high at all times because you always have some of your best players on the field.
Well, I think this plays into, we heard Joe Witt Jr. last week say that it's not 11 starters. It's 17 or 18 guys. I think that's part of it. I also think this goes back to everybody's here through OTAs and stuff. And so they can mix and match right now and see, okay, maybe he can play in this certain position in this package, or he can do this. So you can find guys that are maybe a little further down the roster and say, oh, he excels in this coverage. Maybe we can try this later on and just see. I think they're trying stuff, and I like that because you're trying to find, you got to win on the edges, right? And having a guy that might be only good for one thing or a couple of different coverages or here and there, I think is important because you look at all those years with a Belichick and all those, they had guys that you wouldn't have made many other rosters, but they found a way to make them really good in their way. And so I think that's part of what they're trying as well, is just see, okay, this linebacker is not going to play over Luvu or Wagner, but if they need to be spelled, can he play in this sort of role? I kind of like it. I think it just goes back to, again, they're buying in, they're going to mix and match. You've got a creative defensive coordinator, and I kind of like it.
No, I do too. It's Tobi Altizer here with us on the Hoffman Show. Tobi, of course, one of our colleagues, 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. He'll be doing updates over on The Fan. Morning or afternoon tomorrow?
Afternoon tomorrow.
You got the afternoon tomorrow. Do you ever have to do the morning shift?
Occasionally.
It's as someone who used to do it, wasn't my favorite assignment.
It's not my
I think
favorite.
eventually I did look at the boss and go, I'm good on this.
I'm not a morning guy, so.
Yeah, no, I'm not a morning guy. I'm not a 5 o'clock in the morning guy. I'm not a sound coherent on the radio at 5 o'clock in the morning guy.
Correct.
That's definitely not me. Anyway, Tobi's here. So the mixing and matching, I think, is in part, like you said, and like DQ has said, they're interested in finding guys' superpowers and putting them in position to use them, that's good coaching. But it's also, I think, from an evaluation standpoint, you mentioned something in there that triggered this thought for me too, is like, how many players are walking around being like, oh, if I'd have just gotten my shot.
Yeah.
It was like, here's your shot. Like, you're out there with Bobby Wagner. You're out there with Frankie Luvu. You're out there with John Allen. You're out there with Deron Payne. What do you do in those reps if you're a third-string DB who is like, oh, well, I never get a chance to prove myself? Well, now you're out there with the best, and it creates more of an even playing field from an evaluation standpoint, both in the identification of said superpowers. Like, wow, okay, well, once that guy's got a chance to do something, that's a thing we didn't know he could do. Like, that's cool. But also, you're not over leveraging any particular guy repeatedly, because if you're a safety who's always playing with one corner turns out he's the 90th best guy, it's got to be someone. Just like half a doctor's out there, and the bottom half are a medical school, right? Like that's. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully some of those people that were at the bottom part of medical school, they decided not to go into the medical field. But you get the point, right? Someone's got to be the 90th guy on the roster, and if you're always stuck playing with that guy, that might be something that doesn't reflect necessarily great on you either. And so I think while they're not doing a ton of evaluation now, they're doing as much teaching as they can. It's actually a better learning environment, I would imagine, too, because you can really focus on your job and not just always potentially be covering for someone doing the wrong thing.
Well, and I think you brought up a good point there. Like, these guys clearly are going to be motivated if you're out there playing alongside Bobby Wagner. But there are open spots for playing time. Like, you think about Benjamin St. Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, Mikey Sanders still. Who's playing behind that? Michael Davis is obviously out there, but who's playing behind that? If you're a young guy, you've got an opportunity. You look at edge rusher. You've got some veterans there, but if you're able to make a name like KJ Henry, how's he going to play again this year? Andre Jones, he was a darling last year in training camp. Can he step up and get some playing time this year? Like, there are some opportunities for these guys to play, and I think this just adds to the competition element when you've got young, hungry guys, you've got veterans, like, they can push each other. Like, if I'm on the field with a Bobby Wagner and I'm a young guy, I'm going to want to go harder. Right?
For sure.
But if I'm Bobby
Wagner,
I
might be in a better position, by the way, because Wagner might give me something pre-snap that's like, hey, XYZ. Exactly. And I'm like, oh, cool. And all due respect to whoever's behind Bobby Wagner, I'm middle linebacker on any particular snap, there's a reason that dude's going to the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. But and then on the flip side, right, if you're a youngster and you're bringing the energy, not to say that Bobby Wagner would do this, but you're not going to be loafing around in practice, right? The veterans are going to feed off that as well. So I think it just goes back to that competition that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. have been preaching on that defensive side of the ball. And
especially on the defensive side, you said there's spots available. I don't think that there's any of the 3 levels of the defense where there isn't at least one, if not multiple spots. Linebacker's a little crowded at this point, but there's always room for a 4th, 5th linebacker if they're a demon on special teams, and especially with the new kick coverage rules. It's kind of a gigantic running play. So if you're a linebacker that can run and hit, you have a lot of special teams value right now. So there's definitely chances there. I think the 4th defensive tackle spot is wide open behind Newton, who we got an update on today. They'll see if he's going to be ready for the start of training camp, but things seem to be progressing well for the Commanders' 2nd-round pick. Obviously, Allen and Payne. But, Big Phil today, we were standing there when he kind of had to get yelled at, hey, dude, get on the field. Daryl Tapp's out there. We need a tackle. Phil runs out there, and I'm like, bro, if that was your rep and you just wasted it, that is not a good thing in the eyes of this particular coaching staff. So, between him and whoever else is floating around that competition, obviously the edge rusher position's got kind of that back-end battle behind some of the guys they brought in. And defensive back is wide open. There's definitely a bunch of guys that are locks to make it, but there are definitely spots available as well. So I think that competition side, I think that kind of let's find out what these guys can do element to the way they rotate. I definitely want to ask Quinn about that on Thursday. What, just open-ended, good question asking. Philosophy there. Don't say too much. Don't lead the witness. Don't lead the person you're asking. Just, hey Dan, noticed a lot of different combinations out there, mixing and matching personnel groupings on your depth chart. What's your philosophy on how you get guys rotated in practice? Voila. Let him answer the question.
Yeah, no, and I love it. Because, we were out there watching practice and you brought it up. It truly is a totally different style of mixing and matching. He's got a complete backup secondary in there with Bobby Wagner and the second string D line. It's something where you see mixing and matching, but it's maybe 2s on the back end with the 1s up front or just little bits and pieces, but it's 3rd and 4th string dudes out there. So it truly is mixing and matching, and I think it just goes to show that level of competition they want to have where guys are fighting for the roster. If you're a veteran, you're out there with those guys to help teach them, but also they're going to push you to give that maximum effort level, which in turn is going to help the offensive side of the ball.
For sure.
So
yeah.
I really like this, just the level of competition you saw today versus what you saw last year. I think that's going to bode well for them going forward.
No doubt. Tobi Altizer there. He hosts our Nats podcast, the baseball edition of Take Command, if you will. And obviously covers Nats, been doing a lot of baseball stuff for a long time. So, for the first time in 2024, next, we're going to talk about the Washington Nationals. Tobi, is that a good use of our time?
I think it is. I think it's a fantastic use.
They're sniffing around, playing well enough that I might have to pay attention?
That's
kind of the question we're going to answer.
Yeah, they're only a couple of games out of a playoff spot, Craig.
Oh, God. Okay. Tobi's going to tell me what's happened with the Nats season next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show, live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube. We're in Ashburn at the Commanders facility where OTAs continue, technically now in the mandatory minicamp period. That didn't apparently mean much to Aaron Rodgers. He didn't show up.
He's got something going on, some events.
I don't want to go on a Rodgers rant right now. He doesn't deserve my attention or my energy. I was right about Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets were wrong. That's the end of the Rodgers rant.
I will wait until I see him play more than 4 plays in a season for the Jets before I make
unless they win a Super Bowl, and even then, I don't know if it's worth it.
I mean, come on. If he wins a Super Bowl.
If he wins a Super Bowl, it's obviously worth it. But, God, he is a piece of work.
He's a pain.
I mean, I forget who I'm talking to. Like, for those that don't know, Tobi came to us from Milwaukee, and so I presume you grew up a Packers fan, or
no, I'm from the area.
Okay, that's right. You grew up here, but then
I've
worked professionally.
I covered him for
Milwaukee.
like a year and a half, and I mean it's a pain. It's a piece, like you said, a piece of work.
He is something. I'm not even talking about like his flirtation with being VP of the. Like, he's a work as a football player.
Yeah, he is.
Like, just a lot of stuff there.
A lot of stuff.
Lot of stuff. Anyway, like including Nate Hackett. That's part of his stuff.
Man.
Sorry, Nate. Nate Hackett's a really nice guy. Do you know that?
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic, and Rodgers loved him, but I question.
I think it's because he could walk all over him.
Probably.
And Nate's like, yeah, gold zone.
Yeah, quirky guy.
Very quirky.
And both of them are quirky.
He was the OC when I was in school at Syracuse.
Yeah.
He was the OC under Doug Marrone.
Yeah. Rodgers is a fantastic football player.
Yes.
But I don't know if he's worth the extra.
That's kind of the end of the compliment. And that's kind of the point. Anyway, apropos of none of that, on top of being my go-to Milwaukee area, Wisconsin sports guy, Tobi also, remind me the actual name of your podcast before I make the Take Command joke again.
Bustin' Loose Baseball.
That's it. I was like, why can't I think of it? Bustin' Loose Baseball,
yep.
Which my knowledge of that is actually very appropriate because, Tobi, I kid you not, just there's other stuff in my life that I watch over baseball. It's just not my thing. It's not like I go to a baseball game and I don't know what's going on. If all of a sudden the Nationals go on a heater and I'm like, all right, time to watch some Nationals baseball, I'll be able to read up and talk to some smart people and watch some games and form some intelligent opinions. Because when you cover a sport that perhaps you haven't spent a lot of time on recently, you might want to actually watch the games and get some context and talk to people who have so that you can have informed opinions on your media platform. Just saying that apropos of nothing. But currently, with the state of the Nats, as a guy who does a lot of basketball stuff, both Wizards, which other people are not paying attention to, and Mystics, which more people are paying attention to, but is still more in the, let's call it, not Commanders category in the DC sports culture. Obviously, my Nationals knowledge is not great. Now, with that said, you're, like, how's your Wizards knowledge? How big can I go here?
I know.
I feel like you covered quite a bit of Wiz this year.
I know what's going on.
Yeah.
I know what's going on.
So if I'm going to try, if we're going to play a segment that I am calling the world's dumbest DC sports quiz that we are inventing here on the fly for kicks and giggles, because what else do we have? Also, if you're like, I thought this was Commanders coverage of OTAs, I interviewed Luke McCaffrey afterwards. Tobi knows. He was there and took the video, and that interview's going to play in about 10 minutes. So you can have some stupid fun while waiting for Luke McCaffrey.
There you
We
go.
call that a tease in the business.
Love it.
I don't know if you knew that.
I love it.
You're a pro. You knew that.
I'm learning things.
The world's dumbest DC sports quiz, where Tobi and I, and also, although if you're watching on YouTube, you won't be able to see Anthony because I haven't configured a screen that allows us to do that, and Anthony are going to try to stump each other on DC sports off the top of our head based off solely the fact that there is a sport that we pay attention to that the person sitting across from us does not.
Love it.
So, who wants to go first? Who's got a question?
I can come up with one for you.
I have one. I have my favorite Mystic stat of the season so far, ready to go.
All right, well, let's hear it then.
Okay. And let Tobi go first, because I think you'll be able to get this one, in part because we talked about it on the show the other day, or this is proof that you don't actually pay attention. There is one Mystics player on the 0-12 Mystics that has a non-negative plus-minus on the season. Who is it?
I think I can name one Mystics player. So.
Well, that's not going to help you because
if it's not Aaliyah Edwards.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a bad trivia game for you.
If it's not Aaliyah Edwards, I can't help
it is not Aaliyah Edwards. Ant, do you know who the non-negative Mystics plus-minus player is this year?
Her name is Brittany Sykes.
That is correct.
Oh, there we go.
Brittany Sykes, who got hurt in the second game of the season and is probable to return tonight against the Atlanta Dream, a game you can hear right here on the Team 980. She was playing very well. I guess was a plus minus of 0. I had to be very specific because I said non-negative. She doesn't have a positive plus minus.
Plus minus is 0.
But she has a plus minus of 0. And on a team that's 0-12, you could guess that the rest of the roster is negative. But Brittany's back tonight. Shakira Austin also is listed as questionable tonight, so hopefully she's back. She, as someone who's missed a lot of games and is also very good, has the second highest plus-minus on the team. It is, however, minus on the season. So that's my most fun Mystics trivia fact off the top of my head. What is your, off the top of your head, I don't have a chance of getting this right, Nationals fact that Anthony might be able to get?
Well, we'll give you an easy one. You've probably heard of the guy, but...
Okay, well, that's going to help.
Who has the most home runs for the Nationals this year? He has 10.
Is it Abrams?
It is C.J. Abrams.
All right.
It is C.J.
Okay, Craig.
You said you know the guy, and I was like, well, that narrows it down.
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, I could get real obscure. Who has the most saves for the Nationals this year?
Trick question. Nobody's saving the Nationals. No, I'm just kidding. They're within 5 games. I did look at the record in the break. They're 30-35 on the year.
Mm-hmm.
What is the correct answer? Who is
Well, I think Ant knows this one. Ant, who's the closer for the Nats?
Who's the Nats closer?
Come on, Ant. We talked about this the other day.
It's not Hunter Harvey.
Is it Tanner Rainey? Okay.
No.
I pulled up the Nats depth chart. Here's the first relief picture.
The furthest thing from it is Tanner Rainey.
I was like, Tanner Rainey's still around? Last time I was paying attention to the Nats, Tanner Rainey was throwing.
We were working on this the other day, Ant and I were, because I told him that Hunter Harvey's the setup guy. Hunter Harvey,
Yep.
which he walks out to a song, What This World Needs, and a few more rednecks.
Oh, okay.
The answer is
Gotta
Kyle
be.
Finnegan. The answer is Kyle
Okay.
Finnegan. I
Okay.
think he's top 5 in the league in
There's
saves.
your closer. See, they put relief pitchers and they put closer on a separate
Yeah.
line on the depth chart on ESPN.com. That's how I got there.
Yeah, Kyle Finnegan's been really good this year, too.
All right, Ant, do you have a question for Toby and I in the world's dumbest sports quiz? Then I'm going to ask Toby to actually inform us about how the Nationals are doing and the direction that they're trending.
I will ask a Mystics adjacent question
Okay.
that Craig may or may not be able to get.
Okay.
So, which player on the Mystics attended Syracuse? She did not graduate from Syracuse. Yeah, that is the question. She attended Syracuse but did not graduate from Syracuse.
See, the most famous current W player to hold that is Camila Cardoso, who went to South Carolina,
Yes.
won a national championship with Chicago.
Yep. Ooh, Craig.
Did Slim not graduate? Is that a trick question?
No, she graduated.
Okay, Brittany graduated. Wow, that's a good one. I don't
I'll
know.
give you the number.
Okay, well then I'll
I
probably
think she
get it.
wears 21.
You think she wears 21? Not Jade.
Nope.
Melvin? I don't think she went to an American college. No, she definitely didn't because then she wouldn't have been eligible. She's only 21 years old, and if you go to an American college, you can't get in the league till you're 22.
Really?
Yeah, she wears number 21 for the Mystics.
Why am I blanking? Just tell me the answer. Why am I blanking?
Emily Anxler.
Oh, that's right. And then, dang.
She went to Louisville.
Yeah, she did.
She did not graduate from Syracuse.
She definitely did
Well,
not.
it sounds
She
like
did.
we need a numbers quiz for Mystics players for
I
Craig
know.
as well.
I know. That's I should have gotten that. I was blanking on that. Anyway, all right. More importantly, Toby.
Yeah.
How are the Nats going to mess around and be fighting? Or I'll put it this way: are the Nationals going to be a topic in September?
I think they will be, but not for playoff reasons. I think
Okay.
they will be because I think Dylan Cruz might be coming up to the big leagues around that time, maybe some of the other guys. Hopefully James Wood is in town before then. I think they will be for that reason. But where they're playing right now, like their pitching staff has been fantastic all year, and it's not even the veteran guys. Like Trevor Williams has been maybe the biggest surprise of everybody, but he's on the injured list right now. It's guys like Mackenzie Gore. It's guys like Jake Irvin. It's guys like Mitchell Parker on the bump tonight. Like those dudes that Gore was a top guy, but Irvin last year was their 20th ranked prospect. He's come up and he's been a stalwart in the rotation. Mitchell Parker was their 20th ranked prospect coming into this year. He's come up and he's proved to be a reliable starter as well. It's those guys. The offense at times goes really cold. It's kind of how they're built. They just frankly don't have a lot of power because power costs a lot of money and they're not spending much money.
Yeah.
So their big thing is they've just got to continue to have the starting pitching like that. And if they do, then I think they'll stick around. But, I mean, they're like 2 games out of a wild card spot right now. That's probably not going to continue.
Gotcha. All right. Nats are in Detroit tonight. That's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to be wrong again. I've been wrong enough for one segment. But Nats are in Detroit tonight, 6:40 first pitch over on 106.7 The Fan, and then you can hear all about it and the rest of everything Nationals on Bustin' Loose Baseball with our guy, Tobi Altizer. Appreciate you, dude. Thanks for your help out on the field today. Thanks for co-hosting the show here for 45 minutes. When we get back, you'll hear my interview with Luke McCaffrey, and then Michael Phillips joins us at 5 o'clock. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. My interview with Luke McCaffrey, we're going to put that at 5:30 because John Keim is here. And he said, hey, I can stop down and chat football. So here we are. And that would be pretty funny, though, if I just brought you in and was like, hey, do you want to introduce the interview I did with Luke McCaffrey? I don't feel like that's a good use of your talent. All right. What we're just talking about Jaden in the break. Obviously, he's the most important thing. So let's not pretend like we're going to be too highbrow to talk about something else other than the most important thing. I thought it was like it kind of like the accuracy and some of those things a little inconsistent today from him. Still continue to be very impressed with his demeanor. What did you take away from him in his first mandatory minicamp?
Yeah, well, first of all, those things have been there, right? The demeanor, the patience in the pocket, and it's easy to be that. It's easier to be that way when there's no live rush. I mean, there's a rush, but you're not getting, because there was even one play where he scrambled outside of it, and he hits Diami for 45 yards. May have been sacked. May have been sacked. Now, I will say this, like, with a guy like that, you do have to say may have been.
Right.
It's like you see that guy get out of stuff. So, in fairness to him, so I'll just put may have been sacked.
Yeah.
Still a nice throw at the end.
Sure. And apparently it was a nice catch from Diami. I was screened from it. Apparently he caught it with one hand.
Caught it. Yeah, it was a really nice catch.
So good job, Diami.
Yeah. But so you see that, right? And you're right. Like he's not perfect, and he's not going to be. So, but you do see sometimes not. I don't think we saw like indecision today. I just think there were a couple throws that are like, where are you going with that one? Or that one's a little bit off. And then other throws are really good. You know, he had one little scramble where he throws back to Diami running the other way. It's a really nice throw. Good eyes, good feet, everything. So you see all that as well. I think I always tell people the best thing this spring isn't so much what you see from Daniels as much as what you hear about Daniels. By far, I think that's the most important thing, because like what we're seeing is the kid who's got talent, but what you're also not seeing, Craig, is like a kid who looks lost out there. That's not him at all. So, but I do think it's what you hear. It matters to me a lot more.
How much is, I'm not trying to take credit away from Jaden because the answer to this can be both. How much of that is Jaden and his, I'm going to call it professionalism, which he started to really develop before his senior year at LSU. The famous stories of the changing locks in the building, and he's going in. Like, he started acting like a professional last year at LSU, and the results are tremendous. The Heisman Trophy, the whole deal, number 2 pick in the draft. But also how much credit goes to the coaching staff, because it's not just Jaden who seems to be on top of things, but it seems like that practice and kind of the rate at which they're installing, all that stuff seems very well put together so that there isn't a lot of confusion. And yes, guys make mistakes, but it's football mistakes. It's not just a chaos practice where nobody feels like they know what they're doing.
That's a good point. I will still say, though, to me it always starts with the player. Now, but you are right. Like, you don't look and see. We're not watching 7-on-7 work. Well, we haven't seen 7-on-7 the last couple times. It's been 11-11. But you're not seeing, like we have in the past at times, guys tucking and running in 7-on-7. You haven't seen much of that at all. So I think that speaks to preparation for all of them. But I think for Daniels, it has to start with the person.
Yeah.
Period. You know, when you work like that, a coach can't make you work like that, or they can't make you care like that. And that's where, to me, it makes the difference. That's what gets your butt in there at 6 a.m., right? Now, I don't know. I'm going to guess the other quarterbacks are coming in early as well. That's kind of the nature, usually the nature of guys who play that position. So, but what I do know is he does that. And I think, but that comes from within. And that's where it was at LSU as well. But I think that's a good point that you make, that it's not like others are coming in there looking unprepared. Mariota might make a bad throw, but he doesn't look unprepared at all. And we haven't seen we haven't seen Hartman in the 11-11. You see Driscoll a little bit. But these guys don't look lost. And that speaks to it.
And the receivers, the line, defense, like it's a team-wide thing. It's clearly a culture, but like, it's a chicken and the egg. Daniels, the reason he's here in part, the reason Peters fell in love with him is because that's who he is as a person. Right. He embodies what they want to be. So it's, again, chicken egg, which came first, but it all meshes together.
And going back to that point too, because there were definitely times last year where they were learning a new offense, where you're not hearing coaches having to force them to get back in the huddle to call it again and to do little things a certain way. Like, it's all being done. Like, you don't feel like you're watching a new system being installed because the way, I don't want to say they certainly haven't, I wouldn't say mastered it, but it's been a smooth transition to this offense.
For sure. John Keim, ESPN.com, also the John Keim Report. Check out that podcast wherever you get yours. With us here in Ashburn, we're live after the Commanders' day one of mandatory minicamp. The other thing that Toby and I were talking about earlier in the hour that I think is pretty fascinating is how they're mixing and matching personnel groupings on defense and like layers of the depth chart. Like sometimes you have guys out there that are the fourth string defensive backs, 3 of which won't be on the roster, with Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and Jeremy Chin kind of lined up as 2 linebackers, a third quasi-hybrid, whatever Chin is, and the second string D-line. You're like, how did you guys wind up on the field together? And I wonder if you've talked to anybody about that or the reasons why you think they're doing that. Like, is that intentional or is that random?
Oh, I think that's definitely intentional. And I know they even talked about a little bit last week where you want to see how certain guys perform with guys like Wagner. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but when you watch this, though, when you have new people out there, what does it force you to do? It forces you to communicate well. And so,
that's a great point.
So, like, that's one thing. And to me, I saw that when they're doing a lot of no huddle work too. You've got to do, and we know that that's been a problem. But I do think when you have that, especially new defensive backs coming together, you better talk. And same with the linebackers, right? And so I think that whether or not that's intended, to me, that's a byproduct. But yeah, I think they like working guys together. And plus, the way they talk about their defensive stuff. Joe Witt talked about it last week. I mean, defensive guys, you rotate a little bit more anyway.
For sure.
And Greg Williams would always talk about this in the past, like, we don't have 11 stars. We got 20 stars. We got 20-some packages. But if you are going to use all that, guys have to get used to playing with different people around them. So I think that kind of prepares you for that. How do you handle other guys coming in a certain role or whatever?
Yeah, the communication point is so good because that's something that I also feel like I have noticed in general, but today like really stood out. It's just there's a constant chirping on that side of the ball that is definitely different. Of course, it's June, so you always want to put that caveat on it.
June last year.
Yeah, but right, June over June, year over year on the data, it definitely seems like everything from the lack of messing up on offense and having to restart plays and people know what they're doing to the communication. Like the process just seems a lot cleaner this year compared to certainly last June. And I've been here since 2015, John, and I would say just about any June prior.
It's been a better June than they've had in a long time. For sure.
Without a doubt. Last thing real quick, just a note. Bob Myers was here today, which is like a fun thing for him. Like, hey, let me go in between Game 2, Game 3 of the NBA Finals. What do we know about his role as an advisor moving forward, if any such thing exists?
I think it's a lot. And what he's been for Adam Peters is a sounding board on key decisions. So when you're going through the coaching process, the qualities that you look for to build a championship team, roster, et cetera. During the draft, he was able to help with Peters, just again, sounding board. It wasn't like he's saying you got to take this guy, but it's more like follow the process. You don't have to, you make the pick when you have to make the pick. So people keep saying, well, who are they going to be? Well, in March, whatever, early April, they don't have to even, clearly they knew who they liked,
right.
But they didn't have to say, like, they didn't start spreading it like, oh, we're taking this guy, Jaden Daniels, because there was no need. Right. Don't make the pick before you need to. Because for the other thing, and so I think that he's helping him with a lot of those kind of the philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Adam's a first-time GM. And one thing, it's funny because the more you're around this, like the more you hear like basketball and football coaches oftentimes swapping ideas, philosophies, strategies. Quinn did this with talking to college or basketball coaches about positionless basketball, how then taking ideas for football. And, I've seen this with other coaches too, or heard this. So I think, but in their case, it's general organization running and how you structure it and just, philosophy.
For sure. One of my favorites of that category, at this point, it's, about 15 years ago, Eric Spoelstra went to Oregon and talked to Chip Kelly about kind of the way that they were running the up-tempo stuff, and that's basically how he built the offense that ultimately wins the Heat the championships with LeBron. Tom Haberstroh did a great story on that a decade plus ago.
He did, and I just saw that was the other one I was thinking of, because it was LeBron. I saw a clip of him talking about that and how phenomenal Spoelstra was with that, and how they incorporated it in their offense, and then you saw examples of that, and it's like it was phenomenal. But I like how, when a coach is innovative in a certain way, why not go talk to them? Because clearly it's 11-5, it's a different sport, but conceptually you can take ideas.
What made you have that thought?
Right.
And then how do I apply that thing to my sport?
And they did it, and you saw, and they took off. But that's why that guy's been such a great NBA coach.
Without a doubt. John Keim, you can check out the podcast, the John Keim Report. He'll have a full practice recap all 3 days of minicamp, and of course you can read his work on ESPN.com. Thanks for stopping by, dude.
Thanks,
appreciate
Greg.
it.
Of course.
Michael Phillips going to stop by next as we keep the guests rolling. Luke McCaffrey coming up 5:30 here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We're live in Ashburn after day one of mandatory minicamp, and just after 5 o'clock, we're going to give Michael a proper introduction. It's time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
I'm here. Michael Phillips is here. Neither of us are on the beat anymore, but we're going to do our best.
I'd like to thank my opening act, John Keim. That was really kind of him to drop by for a bit. I mean, you got all this. McCaffrey and is on the show, right?
Yeah, we have McCaffrey. I talked to him after practice.
Luke McCaffrey be on the show.
Yeah.
John Keim's on the show. This is a loaded show. This is a good show. Like, I'm a radio guy now. I recognize a good show when I see one.
You are, which also is why I'm having to adjust all the volumes because
I'm loud.
You're much louder.
I'm loud
than John Keim was. So I had turned myself down in order to be more at Keim's level, and now I'm trying to find the balance.
John Keim speaks softly and carries a big stick. I speak loudly and. I try not to carry sticks. I'm not violent.
You're not carrying anything. You're just waving your hands wildly.
Not a violent person. I'm a lover, not a hater.
What'd you love about Jaden Daniels' day, if anything? I just tried to form that into a question. What'd you make of Daniels' day?
Of course. Look, the teammates clearly respect him and hhis knowledge and his ability to get in and out of the plays. Probably my favorite throw of the day. He's scrambling. He hits De'Ami Brown. Probably, 30, 35-yard throw. He didn't set at all on that throw. He had it just in motion, out of the pocket, throws, boom. Kid's got a big arm, right? Like, lost in all the talk about his speed, there's a big arm there, too.
Yeah, he does. And that's the thing. Because he was being compared to May and Williams and even McCarthy to an extent, people, and of the four, he's got the least big arm.
Yes.
He still has a top 5 arm, and a lot of I think his arm talent's a funny thing because JJ McCarthy threw the second hardest of anybody behind Joe Milton from Tennessee at the combine, throwing a ball into a pad as hard as you can. JJ McCarthy's got a heater, and there's some stuff on tape where he's got a really, really good arm, but on a consistent quick release level, you'd probably look at Daniels and be like, I'd rather have that. And so, there's so much layering, and I don't just mean the ability to actually layer throws when it comes to arm talent, that it can, I agree with you, get lost in the comparison game because May's arm talent is ridiculous.
Yes,
I'd rather have Jaden's processing and all the other things that actually makes you good at quarterback, but just because he from an arm talent, if we're playing football horse standpoint, that he's not going to beat Drake May at that, doesn't mean that he's not going to be a better quarterback and that he doesn't have a huge arm.
Yeah, we were out here for OTAs. He had a couple, throwing it across his arm, across the field, where you could tell he was laboring into it. He was putting in work to get that ball out. But on every routine throw, every regular throw in that 20 to 30-yard range, he looks effortless. He looks really smooth. It's a nice motion. You probably know better than I do who he's worked with over the years, in terms of who developed those mechanics.
Yeah.
But they are clean. They look really good. That's what impresses me about Jaden Daniels, right? This is not a piece of clay that needs to be molded into something. Sure. This is a guy who knows how to throw a football.
No doubt about it. And the other thing that I think watching him in person is it feels, I don't know, I'm not on the receiving end of it. I should ask Luke, ask John, ask Terry, feels like those are really catchable ball.
Yeah.
There's some guys that throw it with good anticipation and zip, and you can tell it's moving, and then it hits guys' hands with a thud that you're like, that sounds terrible. And Jaden, there are times when he's throwing that the ball arrives on time, unless it has the proper zip, but it actually doesn't look like it's moving that fast. As weird as that sounds.
You're not a violent thrower.
Yeah, it just kind of gets there, and you're like, oh, that is absolutely on time and in rhythm and everything you want, and it's clearly moving. If you're standing at the right angle, you're like, oh, that ball's moving. But then you watch from across the field, and it looks like it's just kind of floating in there, and to me, that seems like it would translate a lightness, a touch that makes the ball very catchable.
Yeah, going back to that De'Ami throw, I mean, that's one that you're only going to convert that 50% of the time probably if everything goes right. He put it in front of De'Ami enough, though. We talked about the two options were completion or incompletion.
Right.
Interception was not in play there. Forbes was trailing, and Forbes has a little speed. He couldn't have got on that ball. Either Diami was going to reach and make the catch, or it was just going to fall incomplete, which avoiding those negative plays can be just as important.
For sure. Speaking of interceptions,
Yeah.
the defense seems to be good at them now.
Had a couple.
It's June, which has been kind of the theme of the show, is like, hey, it's June, but this June's better than the rest of the Junes that we've seen around here as of late. Why do you think Quinn, like, after watching Quinn and Witt and that group coach, and obviously it's not the same exact group that was in Dallas, but the two biggest pieces were there. What is it about the way they do things that there is the ball production?
Well, and they caught a couple fluky ones today where it, like, bounced in the air and somebody
but they
slid
catch
in and
them.
got. But they did catch them.
And, like,
yeah.
Dallas caught them consistently, and, like, Seattle used to catch them consistently. Yeah. Like, this is what his defenses do.
They had 4 jugs machines lined up after practice. Everybody came over. Everybody got their reps. Everybody did their time. I don't think that was for show. I think this is a group that really drills down on those fundamentals of catching the football. My favorite turnover of the day, to somewhat change the topic, Marcus Mariota took off, ran. That everybody's trying to swat the ball. They don't. He protects it all the way to the end zone, and then he turns and walks back. He's like 10 yards back into his walk, and he eases up. And John Ridgway has been waiting behind him and comes and smacks it out of his out of his hand. I'm going to get one eventually. However long this takes, I will wait that long to get this fumble. Like Marcus, like, dude, the play's been over for like an hour now.
There was a one up on that. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the Cole Turner swipe? We've now devolved into skits and bits, but like Michael's here. What did you expect to happen?
Yeah.
But also there were skits and bits on the field because like Cole Turner, after one of the defensive turnovers, play had been dead for 5, 6, 8, and he is running full speed, like punching, swiping at the ball, and just like refused to give up on the play, even though the play had been dead and they were like already lining up for the next one. And you're just like, bro, I don't think that's going to be the difference for you, with all due respect.
New coaching staff, everybody's got everybody's got to
maybe
shoot their shot.
Football coaches do weird stuff like that.
Yes,
We're like,
they do.
this is the kind of effort we want. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, rewind a half hour earlier when he dropped an open one. That's the play I care about for 85 at this point in his tenure.
Yep. It's I like everybody's so committed to playing the DQ style of football, whatever that everybody's so locked in. But you mentioned the interceptions, and yeah, I go back to this. 2 years ago, a lot of guys in this secondary I thought had really promising rookie seasons or young seasons. Last year, they all stunk. I find it hard to believe that many players individually were all that bad. And I don't believe the coaching was that good last year, right? Like, I think the upgrade in coaching should be a measurable improvement in how we view these guys.
So something I've been thinking about, I agree with that. That's why I just continued on forward. Ahmed definitely agreed, talked about it quite a bit. The coaching upgrade should do things as well as the personnel upgrades. But there's some guys that you see out there, you're like, oh, yeah, he's still on the team. I wonder if he will be. I want to run some of those names by you next, which I know is not the most fun to do in the middle of June. We're already cutting guys, but like I think it does as we head towards the next couple of days of mandatory camp and then ultimately training camp, like give us some guys that we're definitely keeping an eye on for that category. And that way, if all of a sudden there's a surprise cut at the beginning of September, it's like, well, I remember when Craig and Michael said that in June. So basically, we're trying to get ahead of everything and be the smart guys months ahead of time. And if it doesn't happen, no one's going to remember.
I'm going to make 53 individual predictions, and then you just cut the clip that works later.
Yeah. Or just edit together. People do that on Twitter. It's like, this team, the 32 teams are going to win the whatever finals in 6 months before the season starts. Yeah, that's not what we're going to do. We're actually going to have the real discussion, make real predictions. Not even predictions. We're going to flag some names to watch next on The Hoffman Show. live in Ashburn at Commanders minicamp. There may or may not be a walkthrough happening. I don't know. They put up this barrier at 4 o'clock, so we can't see the field because we're inside the bubble. And then I haven't heard anything happening out there. I've seen other media members poking through, kind of trying to see, like, oh, is there whatever? I'm guessing at this point there is no walkthrough happening, at least anymore, because
I feel like we hear it. This is a group that makes some noise.
they do, but they're like one of the TV stations, maybe it's ABC7, has like a camera set up over there that is definitely on the other side of the barrier.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess that if there was a walkthrough, it's already over.
They would not be allowed to have that camera in that position
No.
right now,
No.
filming a walkthrough.
No.
This is when the trick plays come in. This
Oh, yeah.
guy you load up for the season, right? Warm them up. They had a couple interesting ones today, and I won't give away too much, but they definitely had some plays where Kingsbury has installed a lot of options inside of some of these plays where
Yes.
they can do a lot of different things. What I love about that is that's cool, and also Jaden Daniels, I think, has the processing power to run those plays and make those decisions, which is cool too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Luke McCaffrey, actually, who I spoke to after practice, I had to wait on him because he was working with Anthony Lynn. So, you know, he's trying to understand, like, end-around type of stuff. Who knows? Maybe they'll line him up at running back. I don't know. Maybe he's just like, I want to learn from learn what my brother learned. He got on the cover of Madden. And I talked about all of that with Luke McCaffrey.
Oh,
You'll hear that
I love it.
in 13 minutes, and they call that a tease, Michael.
That was a good tease. I like that right there. What I love was, you know, you've got all these like different guys, and I've read everybody's reports about Jamin Davis being an edge rusher, but to watch him be coached by Darryl Tapp out there and line up.
You covered Tapp as a player, yeah?
Yeah, I love Darryl Tapp. To watch him line up in that spot and be coached, like, oh, this is real. Like this wasn't for show. This wasn't to send a message. This is because they think that is where they can maximize his skill set.
So real quick, I don't know if it's where they think. I think they just want to find out. Like they see a list of traits and they're like, that could work. Let's find out. And that's the thing about this staff is like they will look at what your traits are. And this actually bleeds into what the conversation that I had with Kime, which we talked about, like positionless basketball and like the mix of that concept into what Dan Quinn does defensively, because Quinn actually talked to basketball coaches about it.
Oh, that's cool.
What it is NBA teams realize we have these 6'7" guys that not like 6'2", like 6'7" guys that are lengthy, rangy, can handle, can shoot. They can do everything. So why would we put multiples of them out there? And that creates some advantages for us tactically. Or like we figure out this 7-foot tall guy can do the thing the normal 6'2" guy does, but also the 6'2" guy is actually really good at some stuff that sometimes we ask a 7-foot guy to do. So why don't we just switch them? And we make it, instead of being like the power forward is here. And that's essentially what Dan Quinn has taken to football defensively, is like, oh, this guy's super explosive, has long arms, and has an ability to convert speed to power. Those are things we look for in a pass rusher. So let's try him at pass rusher and see what happens.
What's the worst that could happen?
You just move him back to linebacker and then let him go after the end of the year because he didn't pick up his 5th-year option.
I was going to say, if we're doing surprise cuts, hey, I mean,
Well,
he's on my list.
That's what they call a transition in the business. By the way, I do believe Darryl Tapp, your guy, is going to be on the show tomorrow. So
I love that.
Vertical tees, and radio kids out there listening. Horizontal tees within your show. Vertical tees within the week. I got them both this segment.
That was impressive. You taught me about the clock too through CK.
Yeah.
I'd been doing the clock all wrong too, so now I do the clock right every day.
There you go.
Yeah,
we're out here making the radio world a better place
here to
for
learn.
everybody. All right. Here's
we come on after the Junkies in Richmond, because the Junkies broadcast down in Richmond.
Yeah.
And the Junkies closed their show today with, stick around, we're going to give away tickets to the HF Festival, the alternative rock festival they're bringing back. But then I come on. I don't have tickets to give away.
No.
But what was wild was I did have tickets to give away to Willie Nelson. And so people heard, hang around after the break, win tickets to see, Death Camp for Cutie or whatever. They came back as, hey, sorry, it's me, but I got Willie Nelson.
I wonder what happened to Sheehan, because the simulcast is on the Fan and 980, and we don't really give away tickets on 980.
I hope they gave him something.
You did better than Sheehan. Sheehan's like, I got takes for you. I got to talk about Kristaps Porzingis tearing that thing in his leg.
I love
what
it.
it means for the NBA Finals and how it should affect how it affects the smell test.
Yep.
All right. Commanders have brought in a lot of players. That means some of the ones that were here, some familiar names, are likely to not survive the roster cuts at the end of August / early in September. I don't know what the actual date is this year. Probably early September.
Also, these guys have a late third preseason game. I don't think that changes it, but the whole thing's like
no,
the whole
it's a league-wide deadline.
Yeah,
so,
okay. So just less time on the other side of the preseason game.
So we'll see if that affects their strategy.
They know what they're doing.
If maybe they do something. I always thought it was something, not to get into our late August content here in mid-June, but I always think it's weird that they don't use the third preseason game. And I realize they don't want people to get hurt, but, like, there's so much time between the last preseason game now and the first game. Like, I would ramp into that thing, but that's just me.
I want to co-sign it. I would leave them out of the first one and ramp them into the third. Yep,
but
absolutely.
What do we know? We're just guys who talk on the radio, but at least we know how the clock works. Okay, to pay off the tease from the last segment, Michael, guys that you think, like, I'll say a name. You tell me whether you think they're legitimately on the bubble. And I'm going to start with a guy who was a second-round pick not that long ago, who has barely played, who was drafted by a previous regime, obviously. And I'll leave the pre-qualifiers there. Obviously talking about Big Phil, Fedarian Mathis. Do you think there's a chance that he does not make this roster?
You know, he looked good today. He had some good speed to him. I think he probably – I'm putting him at 95% to make the roster. I'm not prepared to move him to the bubble. I left the door cracked open, but I think they'd like to see a full year of him, and I think he's pretty valuable backup material to Deron Payne.
I don't disagree with that. I think it is more likely than not that he makes it. He's a former second rounder.
I get where you're coming from, for sure.
But, like, I don't know. There was just a moment today where he was supposed to be in and he wasn't. And Tapp was not exactly pleased about it. He's like, I need a tackle, and Phil's running in there, and then he got pulled back out.
Yes.
And that kind of stuff with the new staff makes me queasy.
Tapp came back.
Like queasy on the player's behalf,
Tapp
to be
came
clear.
back over a minute later and said, that's my bad. That's on me.
Okay, that's good. That reporting.
But also, like, he's the kind of guy who does that, though. He'll take one for the team if he needs to take one for the team. So it was a chaotic situation, for sure.
Got it.
With guys running in and out. But I agree broadly, though. Something went wrong there, for sure.
Yeah.
And he was in the middle of that something
and
that went wrong.
Phil needs to have a clean cap. But I do think that he
no
is
doubt.
obviously a tremendously talented player who needs to show that. But I do agree with you. They probably want the year to show it. So that means John Ridgway, who was originally drafted by Quinn and company in Dallas, and then winds up here. The Cowboys tried to sneak him through the practice squad.
Yeah.
The Commanders were like, no thanks, we'll take him.
We'll save him for you for next year.
With Johnny Newton presumably coming back for the start of the regular season.
I think he'll be on the active in week 1, yeah.
So it comes down to how many D linemen are they going to keep, and is John Ridgway all of a sudden on the outside looking in?
5's an aggressive number of defensive tackles to keep, I hadn't considered it that way, so you've opened my eyes to that potential. Like, I do think you always look at who you can get through the cleanest. Like Mathis, probably somebody takes a flyer on that second-round talent, Alabama.
It would be pretty funny if
things.
they took a flyer on Ridgway and then he got picked up again, and Quinn's like, really?
Yeah, I think Ridgway's the easiest to get to the practice squad.
Yeah, of that group, for sure.
Of that group. So I think those are often the tiebreaker decisions. I just think if you put Mathis out there, somebody will say, we can work with that. He's from Alabama. Let's see, let's see what we can do with that.
For sure. Okay, offensively, next guy that comes to mind, De'Ami Brown. Had the big catch today.
Yeah.
That's great. Even though that play was probably a sack, it's not De'Ami's fault, and he ultimately makes the big one-handed catch.
Yeah.
I also think his value is misunderstood. He is a guy that's tremendous as a blocker, special teams player, very, very good. But ultimately, as a wide receiver, you got to catch the football. They have OZ, Olumide Zaccheaus. They have Luke McCaffrey they drafted. They have Terry Jahan. Where does that leave De'Ami Brown?
Excited to hear from Olumide Zaccheaus tomorrow morning on MP on the Mic in Richmond, Virginia. There
Bang.
we go. It was a diagonal tease right there, I believe. Look,
by the way, is available on the free Odyssey app.
Let's go. We've seen enough De'Ami in games that I just don't feel like there's a second gear available there. Like I talk about some of these guys like Percy Butler. Like there's probably another gear available there. You can kick him to another level. I've always said that about St. Juice. Like I think there's something there that you can really – I don't think there's something there with De'Ami. I think we've seen what De'Ami is. And I don't think this staff and this general manager are interested in plateaued, veteran players who don't have that gear. I think they're more interested in bringing some developmental guys in.
So that becomes interesting, though, because, like, how many do they keep? That becomes a huge question. And of that group, what do you value? And this is where I actually think Diame, everyone is like in a rush to go ahead and be like, yeah, he doesn't have a chance. And I just don't think that's
he's
the case.
he's got a chance.
Of course he's got a chance, but like there are definitely people that are like, he's going to be the guy. He'd be a popular answer to the surprise cut question, I think is how I'll phrase it, right? So, but let's do
Is Dax Milne a surprise cut?
I don't think he's a surprise cut.
Okay.
I don't think he's
I just want to see what I can get away with in the surprise cut segment.
Because Terry Jahan McCaffrey, they drafted him.
Yep.
Zacchaeus. And then you're talking about Brown, Crowder.
Especially with this kick return thing being a thing this
Bryson
year.
Tremaine,
Yeah.
like Mitchell Tinsley.
Mitchell Tinsley got a lot of preseason run last year. He was kind of that like preseason all-star guy. Who knows if that ever means anything, but it buys you the chance to be a guy at this game.
And I just think I think there are, and actually, like, if Crowder counts, I think he could be a guy.
Sure.
Which I hate because I love JC.
Same.
But,
Same.
What spot isn't filled by someone else? And that's the problem, right? Especially if McCaffrey can return kicks and or punts.
Yes.
Then what does Crowder bring you? A veteran receiver in the slot and, security at that position. That's definitely worth something. But at the same time, if you can, would you rather have that or a guy like Brown who's a reliable blocker and one of your best gunners on teams? Those are the kinds of decisions that this kickoff return thing changes. And a guy like McCaffrey who's got positional versatility and can play inside, outside, can return kicks. Sainer still, I think, can return kicks. And they're trying out all these dudes.
Forbes is working on it today.
Yeah, they're just trying different body types, different dudes. Eckler's back there.
Sure.
I don't know. One of those guys is getting cut, I think.
Sure. You
And
also have
this.
Who? I think they could bring in another receiver before it's all said and done, too. I don't think that door is closed either.
They already brought in Damiere Byrd.
So, body type, all those things, I think they're still looking to get bigger at that position, too.
All right. We have time for one more. I will let you pick. Is there a name that you want to nominate?
Ooh, you want to put some Chris Paul on the board, or is he just too valuable as a depth piece?
That is an interesting one because I don't think it's off the board.
Great.
Because they have Allegretti to start.
Yep.
Presumably.
Yep.
Then they have Dieter as a backup interior guy.
He is Ricky Stromberg's lane.
Well, that's the
there
thing.
as
It's
well.
I think Paul and if we were to pick pairs and you have to pick a pair of guys and say one of them's not going to be on the roster, a Paul Stromberg parlay, if you will, would be a strong one.
Yeah, it's hard to keep both with what you're doing there.
Yeah, especially if they value the guy they brought in Dieter. They have Biotish, obviously, to start at center. They have Allegretti.
Cosme speaks for himself.
Those are your starters. And then, Dieter's the backup guy. You need one more.
Yep.
But, do they look at a guy like Mason Brooks? Do they look at, someone else? And Braden Daniels is floating around. Do they see him as a guard? There's only so many spots.
Especially the spots aren't as big a deal on a good team, but on a developing team where the GM's going to have some guys he wants to learn and grow, those spots become very valuable.
Yeah, and it also just depends on what they want out of that position. And I don't know what they want out of that position. I think they're still trying to figure it out.
Also, Chris Paul probably could go to the practice squad pretty easily.
That's also true.
So
Stromberg Harder was a third rounder? Yeah, third rounder.
A recent third rounder, too. Yeah.
Right.
Outside of Chris Paul's, the fact that he's had some starts, I don't know that there's anything there that says somebody's going to drop everything to juggle their 53 to go get him.
That's 100% true as well. It's a good point. Michael Phillips makes good points between 10 a.m. and noon into microphones. He makes good points outside of that time window, but nobody cares. Michael Phillips, MP on the mic, 910 The Fan. And Richmond, that's not true. I'm sure your wife and your kids care.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, on the good days. Anything else you want to promote for the show tomorrow?
No.
You're doing it from the parking lot here?
I'm doing it from the parking lot here.
How come you and JP have to do it at the parking lot and I get to do it here?
These are the questions I will spend 2 hours loudly asking while anybody who walks by happens to be in earshot. I do have a fun writing announcement, but it's 2 weeks away, so you'll have to have me, have me back on.
No, we 1,000% will do that.
All right, good deal.
Very excited for that. Luke McCaffrey, my conversation with the Commanders wide receiver is next. Pick 6 at 6 coming as well here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Huge thanks to our guests that have loaded up, sat down with me here at the set. We're in Ashburn ahead, on the heels of Commanders mandatory minicamp. Tobi Altizer, our very own 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980 contributor and host. He was with me for the first 45 minutes of the show. John Keim spent 15 minutes with us as well. Then Michael Phillips, the last half hour. You missed any of it, it's all available in the Hoffman Show podcast feed or by rewinding on the free Odyssey app. Now, for what many of you have been waiting for quite a while, apologies for the delay, but got a chance after practice today to catch up with Commanders receiver Luke McCaffrey on the day that his brother was named the Madden cover athlete, and he got to participate in his first mandatory minicamp. Of course, he's been here for the voluntary, which has been pretty much the same because they've had 100% attendance the whole deal. But got the chance to catch up with Luke, and here's how that sounded. So we're here with Luke McCaffrey after mandatory minicamp day 1. And I actually just want to start asking you what you were just working on, generally speaking. I don't want to give away too many secrets here, but you're working with Anthony Lynn. And it just the attention to detail, I couldn't hear what you guys were saying, but it just looked like you guys are so into it. What's it like to talk ball with guys at this level, like a guy like Anthony who's been around for so many years?
Oh, it's incredible. I think our staff's built with a lot of people who have great knowledge of the game and great leadership, and so it's so cool when you can learn something from everybody. And then, when it comes to our OC, in all of our position coaches, Bobby Ingram, Anthony Lynn, and OG, everyone, Coach Rye, it's cool to be around not only a group of guys that love football, but a group of guys that know football really well. And so, you just come out here every day and try and learn from each and every one of them.
I'm excited to talk about your story, but I'm going to bring up your brother real quick because he was obviously coached by Anthony. What was the scouting report from your brother on Coach Lynn coming in?
Oh, I mean, great football coach. It was cool to see the connections here. Tavita Pritchard, our quarterback coach, coached him at Stanford, and he's one heck of a coach as well. And so just to have these people who I've crossed paths with at different times in my life and to be here now is pretty special, and I'm excited for, what we're building here in this unit.
Since we're on your brother real quick, I'll get it out of the way. Named for the Madden cover today.
Yeah.
What was your reaction, and when did you find out?
It's awesome. I found out a while ago. My mom told me, and then she freaked out because I wasn't supposed to know. But I'm so excited for him. I mean, that's such a cool feat. We grew up playing that game, competing in everything we do, and so to see that, to see how earned it was and deserved it was, is pretty special. And I know, we're both excited to keep getting better and grow this year.
What was the record like between you, him, anybody else that was playing with you guys? Like, who's the dominant Madden player?
Oh, I mean, we don't have any records, any videos, so I think I won all of them. but we had a heck of a competition growing up, just like this unit has here in Washington right now, which is special. These rookies came in and we kind of bonded throughout rookie minicamp, and then the vets welcomed us in, and so it's been so cool to be able to learn from OZ, Terry McLaurin, Dotson, everybody who's kind of welcomed us in. Every person on this team's really just kind of welcomed us in and helped us to grow and to learn, and that's a special culture to have.
Luke McCaffrey with us on the Team 980. I'm always interested to talk to guys who played quarterback that have converted to other positions. So I've been lucky enough to do that with a number of guys over the year, Randall Cobb amongst others. Like, what's the thing that you think from your quarterback background helps you the most as a wide receiver? Oh,
there's a huge communication aspect, and anybody who loves the game is going to learn that. And so I don't think it's just quarterbacks that learn that. Anybody who wants to compete and wants to grow as a football player is going to learn that communication and learn the knowledge of the game. But I think it's been so cool to learn from some guys that didn't, but they still have that knowledge. Zach Ertz is one who's helped me out a ton since I've been here, and just his ability to communicate and his ability to know and see the field is so special. And that's something that, he wasn't a quarterback, but it seems like he almost was, just the way that he talks and the knowledge he has.
I'm so curious on Zach. I do a podcast with Logan Paulson, who I'm sure you've talked to in the building. So Logan likes to use this term for Zach, that he's a master of the dark arts of route running. So what is like one little thing that you can share that you've learned from Zach on maybe the dark arts of route running?
Yeah. I think it's the most simple rule in route running, and yet the most forgotten rule, which is just get open. At the end of the day, you got to find a way to get open, create separation, and he does such a good job of that. And he's so creative in the way that he sees the field. And I'm trying to learn from him every day, and hopefully I can and get a little bit better every day. But it's such a cool journey to be able to learn from guys like him.
One thing that has been mentioned for you and your progression as a receiver in college, and now I'm sure you're working on this in the pros, is tempoing routes. A lot of stuff you've done is full speed, and you've been working on trying to find the right tempo. Yeah. We also hear that when you go up that level, the game is so much faster. So how are you balancing, like, I know I got to go fast because it's the pros, but also you don't want to be going full speed all the time. You got to do all the things you need to at the right tempo.
Yeah, I think you learn every single rep and you compete every rep, and so it's so cool to get out here and try something every single rep, and if it works, keep doing that, and if it doesn't, then you're going to try and go back to the drawing board and relearn. And so there's so many different ways to get open. There's so many different styles of play, and so just trying to find yours as a young guy is something cool. And like I said, these veterans have been grade A, first class, just when it comes to teaching us and welcoming us, and they've helped so much to help shape us, and that's going to be the journey throughout this first year, throughout the first 3 years, and throughout every player's career, is just finding what works, the rhythm and the style of play that you want to put on the field and compete with.
Two more things real quick for Luke McCaffrey here on the Team 980. You got a lot of energy to you. Like, how much fun are you having doing this?
It's a blast. It's a blast. When you're in a room with guys who love football, it's easy to be motivated, right? And it's easy to compete, and it's easy to go to battle every single day. And that's what's so special about what we have growing here right now.
And then last but not least, you got a couple more days, and then it's time off for the summer. Anything fun planned?
I mean, I'll be training most off season, and it'll be nice to be able to train with my brother for the first time in the off season, and to compete against each other, and get with these new guys with their new playbook and settle into that. So I'm really excited. I can't wait for the fall, though. I tell you what.
Yeah,
yeah,
no doubt. Luke McCaffrey, everybody, here with us following mandatory minicamp.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. We are live in Ashburn, where the Commanders had minicamp earlier today. Had a great first part of the show. A bunch of guests, including John Kime from ESPN, Michael Phillips, Tobi Altizer, all of them were out here sharing thoughts. And we will get back to more of our thoughts with our Pick 6 at 6 coming up at 6 o'clock. However, Anthony Haney, let us talk a little NBA Finals first, because there is news that could flip this series on its head. That news is that Kristaps Porzingis has what is being described as a rare injury. Now, exactly what that means, I don't know, because it's rare. I have a pretty wide swath of injury knowledge, but the calf injury that has kept him out and potentially got re-aggravated is they're listing him as day-to-day, but of course they're going to list him as day-to-day. But it is something that he described as a random situation, which I feel like makes the analysis really hard. So apparently he has a torn medial reticellum, allowing dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon in his left leg. I know what the posterior tib is. I mean, I could. Probably not well. It is the medial reticellum, allowing dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon in his left leg. The posterior tib I know way too much about because I have had issues with my posterior tib, the muscle, not the tendon. And let me tell you, big pain in the ass, specifically a pain in the lower leg, actually. However, despite my expansive anatomical knowledge, the medial, I know the medial means it's on the inside. The lateral would be on the outside. But the medial means it's towards the middle. But the reticellum, not in my repertoire. So we're going to stick to basketball here, Anthony. If Porzingis plays, what does that do to Boston's chances? That is a thing we can discuss.
I mean, I think he's still going to be limited. I don't think, this story gets out or it's as big of a story if it wasn't going to affect him. And we've seen, players try to play through injury. We've seen sometimes it, have a positive impact on the game. And a lot of times we've seen it have a negative impact on the game. And if he's not 100%, I don't think they need to rush him out there. He's already had a history of injuries, and I don't think you want to make this injury worse. So I think they should just take their time. They have a 2-0 lead. And granted, no lead is safe in the NBA Finals. Like, every game really does matter. But if he does play, it's just going to come down to whether or not, like, that injury is, like, holding him back. But I think they should hold him back. I mean, they should hold him out and not let him play.
Oh, see, no, I think if you can get up 3-0, like, there's only 7 games. And at this point, there's only 5. All you got to do is win 2. You got to give yourself the best shot. And unless it's something that, hey, if we let you sit out game 3, you're 100% not going to be missing games because of this the rest of the series. But I don't know if this is the kind of, it's a tear in whatever this thing is, the medial reticellum. I have to pull out my anatomy app after this and see if I can figure out what the hell this thing is. But, it's a tear. It's going to hurt. Things are not going to work quite as well. I don't think it's going to heal in a week. So you just kind of got to deal with it the way it's apparently something he can play with. He's listed as day-to-day. He was out at practice / shoot-around, whatever they're doing at this point of the year, when the media was there. He was in good spirits. The Celtics are not saying this should rule him out. If he's not going to get better and there's whatever risk is there, you just got to roll with it. And the question is then what happens to his performance? And I think both this is the nature of a 7-game series where the home team holds serve. Is this series is one game from basically being over. If you're up 3-0, you're winning the series. Yeah. The entirety of NBA history says that. Maybe this could be the first one, and it would be epic. And if Kyrie can author 3-1 along with LeBron and 3-0 along with Luka, like, more power to him. But at the end of the day, if you're Dallas, you got to win this game. If you're Boston, you're obviously then trying to prevent them from winning this game. But also at the same time, if Dallas wins, then all anybody's done in the series is hold home court. Yeah. Which is like, okay, when the series starts when someone wins on the road. It's just when the home team is up 2-0, the series both starts and ends when a team wins on the road.
Yeah, but do you think Porzingis playing, like, there have been times players have played through meniscal tears, and I'm not saying that's the best thing to do, but is this a situation where you risk, your health, your career?
I mean, if it's career risk, then you don't do it. But if it's like, hey, if this gets worse, you're going to miss 3 weeks. Okay, well, it's the NBA Finals. There's no games in 3 weeks. Like, this is the time of year to take a risk. And I'd say that not flippantly. Like, obviously, we should always care for players' bodies. But, like, part of the reason, because it's their body. Like, right, you only get one. Like, they bleed like we do. When they have stuff tears, that it hurts. And they feel pain, even if, they're paid very well, et cetera, they're playing a game, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, a lot of times when we talk about how we manage and treat injuries in professional sports, it's to maximize the chances to play and thus win games. The games you need to win are right now. There's no saving for anything later. So unless it's the kind of thing that can make him miss all of next year, and frankly, even if it is, you don't get up 2-0 in the NBA Finals. Nothing. If it was guaranteed that he was going to get hurt, then he wouldn't be available to play. Like, that's not how injury risk. That's not a risk. That's just, when you hold your hand over an open flame for an extended period of time, you're not risking getting burned. You're going to get burned. Risk involves chance. If the chance is 100, it's no longer risk. It's a certainty. There's no risk there. Even it's just a bad outcome. So with that being said, they have to assess the risk level. Porzingis is going to have to make a decision, which is his to make with his body. But ultimately, you play because these are the games that you're saving for. There's no more saving. And if it's like, hey, if it hurts too bad and you can't perform, like, we'll just pull you out, okay. It's not like it's costing you an inactive spot on game day like it does in the NFL. And frankly, as long as he can play better than, I guess, Sam Hauser? Like, who's taking those minutes? Some combination of Hauser, Horford, and Luke Cornett.
Yep.
It's worth it. Like, for Boston, that's the thing, is he's got to just be a threat offensively. Of course, if he can maximize his skills, like, this is a dude that can drop 40 and block 5 shots and, like, get 18 rebounds. Like, he's a ridiculously good player. And if you get that version of him, that's better. But even if he's just, like, a threat for three-point range that you can't leave alone, that has to be babysat, that opens up the lane for Brown, Tatum, Holiday, White, and anyone else who's trying to drive it. And that's huge. Like, that has been, we talked about that before the series. I told you that was one of the biggest factors for Porzingis being available, is because Dallas became this incredible defensive team, in part because Gafford and Lively were able to protect the rim. They can't do that in this series in the same way that they could camp out on Gobert or camp out on some of OKC's bigs and just park by the rim. They play 5 out. All 5 can shoot it. It's legit. That's a game changer. Dallas hasn't come up with an answer for that. And if that math changes, the series changes. I think Boston still has enough to win, especially with 2 games in hand, but it changes the series dramatically.
How much does it change it? What percentage would you give the Mavs if Porzingis does not play to turn this whole series around?
If Porzingis is out or basically ineffective and out the rest of the series, I give the Mavs a 35% chance of winning. If Porzingis is Porzingis, I give it like 3%.
0.
Yeah, I want to say 0, but I don't want to be. I don't want to be that definitive.
There's a
about
possibility.
Yeah. You never know. Luka's Luka. But like Luka's hurt too. That's the other that's getting overshadowed because Porzingis sounds more serious. But like Luka's like on painkillers. He's picking up a new injury every single freaking game. Like he is just bad.
And before the game.
Yeah, he took a painkilling shot before game 2, and it's like, dang. It's that's not great. And he still was the best player on his team. And apparently he told Kyrie. You see the headline about Luka and Kyrie?
What did he say?
Luka, I want to get this quote right. Let's see.
I hope he told him he needs to play. I need you, dude.
Basically, but the quote was something like, Hermano, you got to play better. It was Kyrie to Luka, even better. Kyrie told Luka, it started with me just telling my hermano, which is brother in Spanish if you're not aware, me just telling my hermano I got to play better for him alongside him. Irving said, using the Spanish word for brother. That's what I said. In order for us to accomplish our goal, we both have to be playing well. We both have to be doing the little things, doing whatever it takes to win. So there you go. Kyrie said it was an easy conversation. Yeah. Kyrie hasn't been very good. He said he's got to be better. That is an easy conversation. All right. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we will do our Pick 6 at 6. That is where we take the 6 biggest Commanders storylines, and we give them to you at 6 p.m. A lot of Dan Quinn, a little Terry McLaurin, both of them talking about Jaden Daniels, including what DQ said about the potential for Jaden to become the starting quarterback of the football team. We will discuss all of that next here on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show, final hour here on the Team 980. We are live in Ashburn, Virginia at the Innova Performance Center, a.k.a. Commanders Park, where I was able to watch minicamp earlier today, day one of practice. I do believe we'll be back out here tomorrow. They will be back out here tomorrow. I think I've mentally made the decision that I'm coming out here tomorrow. They will also practice on Thursday. Typically, the third practice gets nixed, but Dan Quinn apparently told the players weeks ago, like, no, we're going to go all 3 days that final week. He gave them some virtual time in between, but they're going to use this mandatory minicamp period to try to get as much installed as they can going into the summer. So 3 days out here in Ashburn, which means we have a pick 6 for you, 6 observations, 6 biggest storylines of the day, and it goes a little something like this.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, number 1, competition.
Number 1.
Competition is Dan Quinn's favorite thing in the entire world, and there is going to be competition at multiple positions coming up in training camp. Right now, it's much more of a teaching period, much more of an education period, much more of an install period, much more of a get everybody on the same page period, but the competition is coming, including at kicker.
Well, I think at the top of it, just like at all the spots, John, like the competition part of it to go. And so we'll keep digging in, over the next few days, and certainly as we're preparing into camp, not just there, but all over. And but yeah, we will include Lucas as part of a tryout for the next couple of days as well.
So there is a new kicker that they brought in that they'll be trying out. There will presumably be other kickers that get looks throughout the spring if anybody's let go or comes out of the UFL, or in the fall if anybody's let go for sure. And then they'll get to who they want by the end of training camp, and perhaps it'll be someone who's not with them at all through any of that period, because if someone has a good camp somewhere else and loses a kicking battle, maybe to a veteran or maybe to a younger guy, they might just say, hey, that other team's second best kicker would be the best one for us, and all that competition we did, hey, they were competing too. It just wasn't in our building. That's the nature of things. I think more interesting probably, though, is the secondary, where there is, I would say, like multi-layered competition. Obviously, there's simple stuff like who's the starting outside corners, who's the starting safety, whatever. But because they play so many different sub-packages, and because they have so many roles, and because, as Joe Witt said, they're 17 or 18 starters, you have all kinds of competition for all kinds of snaps on the field. And Dan Quinn also talked about that this morning.
No, absolutely. This is now, and actually through the first 3 or 4 weeks of training camp, there'll still be that to find out the right things, the right patterns, and it won't be just 11. There'll be 15, 16, 17 guys that'll have a role, 3 safeties, 4 big D linemen, 3 backers, 2 backers. So not just at the secondary, but at a number of the spots too that we're still pushing.
I think the thing that I really appreciate about this staff is they want to find out what people do well and build stuff to ensure that those people are on the field in a position to do that stuff. And they also want to find out what guys don't do well, and they would like to avoid those players on the field doing that stuff. And when you have as many options as they have, then you can use this period to find that stuff out and then build something. Obviously, they've built a lot of it already, but test it, keep what sticks, throw out what doesn't, maybe create a new thing if you find something new along the way. And by the time September rolls around, you'll have some good stuff and go deploy it and then see how it does against other people. But they're definitely mixing and matching a lot of different defensive backs, and they're not just mixing and matching them amongst each other. They're mixing and matching them with different people playing alongside them. So, for instance, a bunch of different guys have gotten to play snaps with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu at the linebacker position. So at that point, you can compare, okay, the communication for Wagner and Louvu we know was good. This breakdown happened in the secondary between these two guys. Maybe we need to mark that down as a data point. That's the kind of stuff that I think is really interesting, is it's not just like, okay, plug and play one thing. and the twos are always kind of with the twos and the threes are with the threes. It's like, all right, let's take the 3 secondary and the 1 linebackers and the 2 D line and see how they play together. And I think that is really good information gathering to see what guys truly do well and build that Commanders defense like Joe Witt has talked about so often.
Number 2.
Jaden Daniels obviously continues to be the main story, and whether or not he's going to start is going to be the biggest story come August. He was QB1 today working with the 1-0 line. I'd imagine Mariota gets the bulk of that work tomorrow, which is interesting because it actually hasn't been that big of a talking point. Like, it's not this big contentious quarterback controversy. It'll be a discussion, but Dan Quinn and company continue to kind of downplay it as much as they can, but they also continue to be asked about it. And today, the version of the question was, what do they need to see to ultimately name Jaden Daniels the starter?
Yeah, I think what's important for Jaden and some of his teammates, especially the young guys coming in, as the reps are now happening, how are you doing in the execution of those, whether that's playing quarterback or tackle or nickel or safety. And so the expectation is just to see, how familiar he is with the concepts, making sure, all right, this one we want to keep, this one, we don't, in terms of, the things that he has the most comfort with. So I think just really running the system now. Obviously, you see us at the line of scrimmage some, we huddle some, so we put in a big package. Now it's about execution of it.
And there's just a level of control and trust that you have to earn as a quarterback. And I always think that's really interesting because, like, coaches, especially I feel like offensive coaches, often will go with the guy they trust versus the guy that maybe has the higher upside but a little bit more variability. And that comes down to not necessarily how they play, but like the ability to call the play in the huddle, the ability to get guys lined up, to at least give whatever it is that they designed on paper a chance. And I always found that pretty fascinating. And some of that is probably ego-driven, where it's like, if this guy would just execute my scheme, and it's like, nah, this other dude who might not execute it quite as often but has playmaking skills that your favorite guy that you trust and is like your blankie doesn't have, that guy's gonna win more games. That guy's gonna give you a better chance to win on a more consistent basis. But I also understand it, that you want to be able to just say, we trust that when the play call goes into your helmet, you're gonna try to run it the best you can, and that best is going to involve, at the very least, starting from the right place. And so what are some of the things that Dan Quinn and company need to see from kind of that mastery type of category for Jaden Daniels to earn that trust, as if he isn't already? He definitely is, but what's the next step?
Well, I would say at times getting out of a bad play, here comes a blitz to this side, get to the check, get to something else. Knowing where to go with the correct read. And at the end of it, it's just having command, honestly. It's whether it's in the huddle or at the line of scrimmage. And the nice part, what you do see, this is a guy who's had a lot of starts and a lot of experience. That showed up early for when he first started here, and it continues right now. And I think when you guys are watching practice, you'll feel that as well.
It's something that I definitely have felt, that control is, I think, the reason that I came out of the first OTA being like, I think this guy's going to be a starter. I just think he executes the offense better. I think that Mariota's still learning this offense in a lot of ways. And Jaden's, like, because they're actually coming from the same place and of not knowing, yes, Marcus has tremendous NFL experience compared to Jaden. But in this offense, they're kind of starting pretty equal. And I think the way that Jaden has handled it has been pretty tremendous. And accordingly, he's got the higher upside. He might have the higher current side, if you will. And I think he's going to be the starter in not too long into August, if not certainly by week 1. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And this is our Pick 6 at 6, where we give you the 6 biggest takeaways from the day. Off the 6 best sound bites often is the form. And one thing that John Keim mentioned when he was on the show with us earlier is it's not really about it's not just what you're seeing from Jaden Daniels. It's what you're hearing. And Terry McLaurin was asked about his young quarterback today. This is number 3 here, Anthony. Number 3, please.
Number 3.
Yes, number 3 in our Pick 6 at 6. And here was McLaurin, who had lots of words to describe his young quarterback.
He's very charismatic. I think he's really personal when he walks into the building. He just has a calm demeanor about him. He's very approachable. So guys have no problem whether you're an offensive lineman, receiver, running back, talking to him, communicating what the objective is of this play or what he's seeing or what he's thinking. And he came in really prepared. I feel like when he was getting ones reps or where he's working with the twos, like he does a great job of getting the most out of the reps that he needs to accomplish. And I think he's going to be a really good player because of the time and the work that he puts in. Like, I don't think I've had a young quarterback that really has come in and within the first week he's like, hey, can we get this route or let me get this rep after practice? And so it's exciting for me because, that opens the door because they got a lot on their plate, but at the same time when there's that open door of communication and he's not afraid to get that work in before or after practice or talk through things, it makes the growth part a lot quicker. And he's very talented, but he's extremely humble as well. And I'm looking forward to see how he continues to grow. And it's hard to pinpoint when you're around him more. You can really tell, like, he's humble, but he's confident in his ability. Like, he's played at the highest level. He's played against really great competition, and he knows that he can make all the throws. So he's not putting the cart before the horse. He's literally taking this thing day by day, and he's doing a really good job right now.
There's a phrase that I love from my guy, Vinny Scolo. Vinny is a trainer up in Central New York who's worked with a bunch of NFL guys over the years. And Vinny is the first guy I heard use the phrase, a white belt mentality. And if you're familiar with martial arts at all, the white belt in a lot of them is the belt they give you when you walk in the door. You got to tie your uniform with something. They got to give you some belt. The black belt's the one you earn later on in the journey. If you know the martial arts as well, the black belt's not the end of the journey. It's the beginning. But anyway, enough martial arts talk. But using the analogy here, like, you walk in, it's your first day, and you just want to learn. Like, that's why you're there. That's why you're showed up. And Vinny often tells his athletes, I want you to show up every single day. And he himself would be like, I show up every single day. Even though I'm training NFL guys, I have a white belt mentality. I'm here to learn. And it feels like that's how Jayden Daniels is. Jayden Daniels very much seems to have a white belt mentality, that no matter where he goes in his career, he's always going to be like, what can I learn? I'm going to approach this as if I know nothing, as if I'm a beginner. Now, there's probably a little bit more of a nuanced conversation about how you actually go about that, where at some point you know enough that you don't necessarily just want to take in all the information. You want to challenge it based off of the things that you've learned previously, et cetera, et cetera. But the mentality of being open-minded, right? It doesn't mean that you actually implement every new thing you learn because you don't know anything. But the mentality of being that open-minded, which is why I love the phrase, I think is something that Jayden Daniels has in spades and is something that is rubbed off and been apparent to his teammates like Terry McLaurin, as Terry so eloquently described there.
Number 4.
Dan Quinn, of course, back second stint as a head coach. D.C. in Dallas, head coach in Atlanta, D.C. in Seattle. You know how this his resume goes at this point. So, hey Dan, how's it going being a head coach again?
Yeah, boy, what a great question. I would say the first thing that I probably noticed is really the work of the players. I thought they've thrown a hell of an offseason. We asked them a lot early on, create some standards together, and I've really been impressed by the work and the skill work that they've put in. From a coaching staff-wise, it was a great thing to hear. One of the Bill Walsh fellows that had been in here for the few days, he said, you would have never known that you just came together just a few months ago as a staff. Being around everybody, it felt like they'd been around each other for years. So that made me feel good knowing that these guys are connected on the field and off, because the players see that as well. To see a coaching staff that's connected, they'll feel that same example that applies to the locker room.
I really actually love that point, and it's something that I hadn't really thought about until I heard Dan say that, and it's 100% true. There's been a couple times where the thoughts crossed my mind. I was like, oh, those guys haven't worked together before, but you just kind of almost take for granted the fact that, you know, the communication between the coaches and not just like Cliff and his quarterbacks coaches, or working with Tavita and working with David Blau and, Bobby Ingram is a wide receivers coach. These guys have never worked together before, but even across the ball, you've seen some times where there's really good communication. Cliff and Joey Jr. and everybody's able to get what they need done. Not two sides of the ball yelling at each other all the time. Like, it is a very cohesive staff. And that absolutely cleans up the communication to the players. And it's something that, in talking to Logan and other guys that have played, like there's times where you're in a meeting and it's pretty clear that the staff is not on the same page because the OC does things one way and then the tight ends coach is telling you something else, and you get on the field and the quarterback's coach is running the drill and he says it another way, and you're like, do you guys, like, what do you do in your meetings without us? And that kind of thing is just not happening at this stage. It's early, and there hasn't been a lot of room for conflict because this is the happiest time of year in the NFL. But it is something that I definitely appreciate, and you almost can take for granted because that's how it should be. But it often isn't, and the cohesiveness of everything has been it's been apparent, and it's great. And it's clearly something that Dan values. And there's a quote that came out of a behind-the-scenes, I think it was Commanders log video that the team put out from one of Dan's first staff meetings. And it is, you can only coach someone to the depth of your relationship with them. And that just resonated with me on like a spiritual level. And the building of the relationships between the coaches so they can work with each other, and then the coaches and the players, and then the players and the players, right? Because that is true if, like, Bobby Wagner's trying to coach up Jamin Davis. He can only do that to the depth of the relationship that they have. And it seems like that level of effort to get to know each other, to work together, to build professional relationships is paying off on the field, and you got guys making plays and celebrating each other and acting like a team. And that hasn't always been the case around these parts as we're live here in Ashburn after day one of mandatory minicamp for the Commanders. Wrapping up our pick six. We got a fun one to finish, but first one more serious, if you will, football situation.
Number 5.
This is not a time of year where they're doing a lot of evaluation. This is a lot of teaching. But as they put together the roster and start to do the evaluation, I think it's worth asking what value does like last year's tape, whether it's here or somewhere else, play in evaluating a player? And it seems like to get here, obviously your tape last year mattered and who you are as a player mattered. But moving forward, Dan Quinn says not so much.
You know what? I didn't really discuss much from the past. And I wasn't here, so I don't have a way to compare into that. And so every year is different. So what I can say is this is what I've seen from this part moving forward and finding all the unique stuff that it does have. So all I was looking for to say, I've got fresh eyes, no bias on what happened or what could happen. I just want to see what your best looks like. And that's what now and into training camp is for. So that's why this is such an important camp for us. This is our last time together before we go to training camp. And I really want to see a lot of the learning, the technique, the communication, the speed. And then when we get to training camp, we'll add the physicality part to that.
One great trait of a coach, Will Dawkins said this about Brian Keefe on the Wizards side of this, and we'll obviously see if it's ultimately true and how good Keefe can be with this. But one great characteristic is, do you see what someone can be? Not what they are, what they can be. And I think that is essentially what Quinn is saying here is like, yeah, okay, we've seen what you have been so far, but if you had bad coaching or you were asked to do something you weren't supposed to, it's not a reflection of what you could be. Now, in this system, we're seeing what you can be. And so we're going to evaluate that, and I think that's the right way to put together a 53. From the football field to the baseball field to wrap up, yeah, we got to talk about it. The final number here in our pick six.
Number 6.
Dan Quinn was asked last week about Jaden Daniels' first pitch that he was going to throw for the Nationals and was like, yeah, no, we talked about it. We gotta do a good job. It didn't go great for Jaden Daniels, so what did Dan Quinn have to say about it today?
Oh, the first pitch, lots to discuss there. We had a lot of fun and a lot of practice. It was actually our first time at a Nationals game, so it was a really cool venue to be a part of. So it's a good thing he's throwing here and not down at the ballpark.
Well said, Dan. Well said. Well said. Very, very different jobs. Baseball pitcher. Throwing a baseball, very different than throwing a football. And that is they're paying Jaden Daniels to throw football. So he did a good job of that today. And he continues to do a good job of that, which is good because that's the one he's paid to do. All right, that is our pick 6 at 6. The 6 biggest Commander storylines at 6 o'clock. We do it when they practice for the off season, and we'll do it every single day of training camp as well. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we didn't get a chance yesterday to talk about the big NBA news, non-finals adjacent. Dan Hurley turned down the Lakers. What's next for the Lakers? And are we just at a point where the Lakers aren't one of the premier franchises in the NBA anymore? Am I jumping the gun there? We'll talk about it next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Tomorrow on the show, I do believe that we're going to have Commanders defensive line coach Daryl Tapp, so something to look forward to there. It's a Wednesday. What else do we do on Wednesdays, Anthony?
Sometimes we have Linnell Willingham. That is sometimes because, he likes to switch up his schedule.
He does.
Sometimes it's Tuesday, sometimes it's Monday, sometimes it's Sunday. Sometimes we have Linnell.
Hopefully he's down to do the show tomorrow. Although I will be out here again, so who knows? That's the fun of it. Like I haven't pestered Nikki or Fortier to come on yet, so I feel like their time is coming. We'll see what they're working on. So you could have them. TV folks are around late, so do that. We do have game 3 of the NBA Finals tomorrow to watch and discuss. So yeah, just tune in tomorrow. Plus we'll have a pick 6 because it's a day where we're doing Commanders practice. It's why I'm out here in Ashburn. I guess I didn't say that. I'm in Ashburn. If you're like, where are you? You said you're somewhere. I'm in Ashburn. I'm in the bubble in Ashburn. Anthony, it's a shame that you can't come out here, that you have to hit the buttons. Not just because I know you want to watch practice, but you could definitely run a 40 in here right now.
Oh, it's empty, huh?
There's nothing going in here.
Dang. I'm in my athletic wear as well. I got everything on.
You're going to hoop after this.
The car. I am going to hoop after this. Yeah. Today is Tuesday. I will be going to hoop. I may hoop Thursday. I don't know. But yeah, today I got to get some cardio in. Tuesday is going to be my cardio day.
I see. I am going to drive home, and on the drive home, you know what I'm going to listen to?
You will listen to Take Command.
No, I do need to send clips to William to put together a Take Command episode on the best of the show today because Logan is on vacation. I picked a hell of a week, big fella. I don't know. He might not have had a choice in the matter. But anyway, Logan's traveling. I don't know that he's actually on vacation. I should not besmirch my co-host. No, I'm going to listen to Dream Mystics on the Team 980.
Oh.
I'm going to flip on our radio station. Because the Mystics are looking for their first win, and I can listen to the game thanks to Megan and Christy and Meg on Monumental Sports, and hopefully I make it home in time to watch Wes at halftime and not listen to him. Not because I don't enjoy Wes Hall's voice. In the halftime show, I don't want to still be driving at that point. So to the Northern Virginia traffic gods, I pray unto thee. Please allow me to be home.
I pray for you as well, Craig.
Please allow me to be home. I haven't seen my wife in days because she's been stuck at a work retreat, and I would like to see my wife. So I'm going to go home and be a good husband and figure out what the hell I'm making for dinner.
Big hug when you see her?
Yeah, of course. She's had a rough couple days. Work retreats are great until they happen, and then you're like, okay, time to go.
Time to leave.
Time to leave. There's a lot of people, especially if you're an introvert. It's a lot of people time. That's the thing. Yeah. Like a lot of people are working remote these days, and if you're used to just not having to deal with anything and you work remote, then all of a sudden all the people that you're on Zooms with on occasion are constantly up in your space for 72 straight hours. Eventually, you're like, I think we've had enough. It was great to retreat with all of you. I'd like to retreat to my home. It's just a general. It's not specific to her colleagues, many of whom she likes a lot. It's not specific to her. It's all of us. Yeah. If the Lakers had a coaching staff retreat right now, no one would show up. But transition, as they say. Anthony, I think I have bad news for you as a Lakers fan, which is to say that I do not think that the Lakers, until the Buss family sells, are going to be a premier, or can be considered a premier franchise in the NBA. And I think the Dan Hurley news is obviously not the Dan Hurley news is not like a nail in the coffin of that. It's just another example. But I think there's a reality that the Lakers are not awake to that they need to wake up to. And I don't know the absolute best way to fix it. I mean, obviously they could sell part of the team to someone and influx more cash. But ultimately right now, the Lakers are set up like a family business. They do not have state-of-the-art everything. They do not have the most expansive coaching staff. They do not have the biggest analytics department. And for years, they were ahead of a lot of teams on a lot of stuff. Like Jerry Buss, if you watched the HBO series and watched some of the documentaries and things about the Lakers in the 80s and when Buss took over and through the 90s even in the early 2000s, like he was an innovator. From stadium naming rights, the Great Western Forum. Most people don't even know that like that's named after the Great Western Bank. They just think like it was in L.A. and it's the West. No, it's called the Great Western Forum because Great Western Bank paid the Buss family and the Lakers a bleep ton of money to have their bank symbol on the arena. Staples Center, when that naming rights deal was done, was still one of the biggest one. Obviously, it's now Crypto.com, and I don't know how well that one's going because Crypto.com and a lot of the crypto space is incredibly volatile, and I thought that website went under for a second. I know FTX did, which I think bought the Heat's naming rights, the naming rights down for part of Miami's arena or something, and then that went kaput. But for years, they found ways to make revenue and make money and thus have more resources, and a lot of other teams were also like family ownership deals, and they were ahead. The TV rights to stadium naming rights to the ways they used the arena on non-game nights, like there were so many innovative ways that before we're in the modern times with modern technology and some of the ways that people are doing sponsorships and all that stuff now, they were ahead. And now they are, relatively speaking, to even their counterparts in L.A. and the Clippers, they are cash poor. The entire Buss family fortune is basically the Lakers, which makes it one hell of a family fortune. To be clear, financially, I would much rather be a Buss than I would my current financial status. I'm not saying remotely that they are poor by any means or that they can't fund an NBA team, but they can't fund it like Steve Ballmer does, and they don't run it like Steve Ballmer does. They don't run it like Ted Leonsis does. Like Ted, to his credit, has invested a lot in the Wizards over the last 2 years, especially as he's gotten Michael Winger in charge, or last year, I guess, as Winger has been in charge and hired Dawkins, and Dawkins has been allowed to hire staff, and they have way more assistant coaches, way more strength and conditioning people that they're going to bring in. They're understaffed at the moment because they're in the middle of hiring some of these positions, but they are flushing out their staffs. I think you've seen the difference here in Ashburn, frankly. Josh Harris has opened the floodgates to building a professional organization, and from a fourth grass field to, I heard Deron Payne say in an interview with Scott Abraham earlier today that I presume is on ABC7 at some point. Scott slept. Kendall, the cameraman, who's been around forever, is a legend of the business. He's still here. We're the only two left in the bubble that I can see right now. Anyway, point is, like, I heard Deron Payne tell Scott, like, I've got more coaches walking around now than I ever have before. And this is what a real NFL staff looks like. And I think the Lakers are much more akin from like a resources standpoint to the previous iterations of the Commanders under Dan Snyder, without obviously a lot of other Dan Snyder baggage, than they are the current version of the Commanders, which run a lot more like the Clippers in the NBA, or the Sixers, obviously, who share an owner, or even the Wizards, who are not necessarily cutting edge, but at least in the last year have gotten a real level of investment. And not that Ted was not willing to do some of that beforehand, but you now have the right people in charge to like be like, oh, no, other teams are doing this, and we need to have this too. The Lakers aren't there, and they keep hiring people from the wrong places, and unless they are willing to modernize their organization in a post-LeBron era, this is the new reality for the Lakers. They are going to be a mid-tier team that survives on geography and history alone, and eventually that history is going to be so far in the past that people aren't going to care.
So in addition to like resources, how much of the financial offer that they made Hurley do you think was a part of his decision not to join with the Lakers? Because he's not the only, coach that they tried to sort of kind of like underpay. They tried with Ty Lue a couple of years ago. They tried with they wanted Monty. So it's not just Hurley that they've tried to underpay. It's also the other coaches that we see as good coaches. We just seen Ty Lue get 14 a year. Monty got 12, 13 million from Detroit. So I think that's also a huge part of Hurley's decision.
They offered Dan Hurley a lot of money, but it wasn't a premier offer. I could make the argument that it was a fair offer because he's never coached in the NBA before.
He hasn't done anything.
But if you're not going to offer top dollar, and by the way, like you do, like it is LA, right? I know when you're making $11 million, like okay, or $11 million a year, like how much you really worried about cost of living, but like. $11 million in LA doesn't go as far as $11 million even in Phoenix, right? Yeah. Another major city, but like Arizona's tax situation versus California's versus cost of living, like all that kind of stuff. Like the Lakers job should be one of the top paying jobs because it's an NBA job and your money doesn't go as far in Los Angeles as it goes other places. Like that's just a very human side of that. Nevertheless, the paycheck measuring contest, we'll call it, that NBA coaches and competitive people do. Right? So there's that element to it for sure. But if you're not going to pay me top of the league and I'm going to be fighting an uphill battle because this organization is not run in a streamlined, efficient way, lined with a bunch of professionals, it's run like a family business, and I don't have the resources that I'm going to have other places, why would I take the job? If I'm someone with options, like, would I rather be at UConn, which is run like a big-time freaking basketball program? And by the way, UConn specifically, like they don't do football on that level. Basketball's the thing there, men's and women's. Like if they get basketball stuff, it's him and Gino being like, "We want this," and they go, "Okay." Like, would you rather have that? I didn't realize I made like the argument for LA the other day, so I'm not trying to speak out of both sides of my mouth here, but like. You do have to do enough. And I think this is a reminder that the Lakers don't have a lot to offer relative to a lot of other NBA organizations who have modernized, invested, and are run by people who have done business and know what it means to be cutting edge in the last, forget 10 years, like 15, 20, like all Jeannie Buss knows. Jeannie Buss is very, very smart, to be very, very clear, but like she's never existed outside the Lakers bubble. She grew up in that. She only knows one way to do it. She doesn't have the experience of a Josh Harris and the connections of a Josh Harris because she's only done Lakers-adjacent stuff, which is why they keep hiring Lakers-adjacent people, and they always come back to the same people, and it's why they hired Magic and they hired Kurt Rambis, and they hired these people that are always seemingly around the Lakers. And unless they're willing to kind of be like, hey, I know we're the Lakers, but we need to do what Alabama football did when they hired Nick Saban, like bleep it, let's go get the best guy and do whatever he says, they're not going to be a premier organization. They still are, and that's the thing, right? They have the opportunity because they are the Lakers. NBA players want to live and work in LA. There's only two options, them and the Clippers. And so if they can make themselves palatable, make themselves an option, like it's them, the Clippers, the Heat, the Suns. There's only like 5 or 6 teams that dudes want to play for. And the Lakers are never going to lose that because they're in Los Angeles. But you have to offer more than that. And they've gotten by on that for so long that I think the reality in a more connected, digitally connected, et cetera world is teams look at or players look at like what they built in OKC and they're like, that's sick. I know I got to live in Oklahoma City, but like I can live in LA in the offseason and we travel a bunch. And I'm not saying that Oklahoma City is going to all of a sudden land a massive free agent. But like some of those mid-tier guys that want to win, which you need to win championships, they might be more willing to go somewhere where they feel like they can actually win a championship. And a coach, by the way, might be more willing to go somewhere where they can actually win a championship. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, we'll preview Mystics and Dream and wrap up the show with real things real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up the show. We're on YouTube, and you can see us. And it's like not the usual background. It's the bubble out here in Ashburn. Be out here tomorrow as well. Commanders minicamp, the main story. And if you missed any part of the show, definitely worth a listen on the Hoffman Show podcast feed. All right. Also, by the way, Luke McCaffrey, the interview is already up on YouTube if you want to catch that. It is at Craig Hoffman. I'll put it up on the Team 980's page in just a few minutes as well. All right, real quick before real things, injury update, not good from Atlanta, which is Kareem Copeland reporting Shakira Austin is out tonight. So Brittany Sykes back makes her re-debut, if you will, for the Mystics on 2024. She went out in the second game. It has been a disaster in many ways without her. They're 0-12. But, Anthony, do the Mystics get off the schneid tonight?
With B. Sykes in the lineup, yes. I'm saying we get off the schneid. The thing is, a lot of our games have been competitive, Craig.
I agree.
They
That
have
Shakira,
been
I'd say
down to the
definitely.
wire.
But even with Slim back, I say tonight's the night. I think she comes back, has a big game, and does what needs to be done. Mystics off the schneid tonight. That game coming up at 7:30 here on the Team 980. Any other housekeeping to get to, Anthony, before we get to our real things that real people said into real microphones?
I don't think so.
Well, then it's time for real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Anthony, I feel like yesterday we had a couple good ones that we didn't get to. So we can pull those up as well. But let's start with the one you just told me about in the break. Story time with former Heat guard Josh Richardson.
We're playing the Warriors. I'm not playing yet. I'm in the suit, so I'm observing. I'm watching everything. So the half ends and Bird's like on the bench and the clock's going down and he's sitting there like this.
Probably on his fourth cup of coffee at the time.
What's wrong with this? What's this guy's deal? The horn goes off. He goes, woof. It just sprints to the locker room like dead sprint. It ain't no way he just did that. So I walk back. I get back there. This man is sitting in his locker like this, huddled over, eating a double chili cheeseburger. At halftime. At halftime.
I'm guessing that is from the OG's pod with Mike Miller and Udonis Haslem.
Yes, sir.
Bird, as in Birdman. Birdman. Chris Anderson. Man, when I tell you, a chili cheeseburger sounds fantastic. I am so hungry, Anthony. I meant to bring a protein bar out here. I didn't. I made 2 sandwiches to bring with me for lunch, and I ate like 1.5, and I was like, let me save half a sandwich to eat later so that I am not hungry by the end of the show. And by the time I got back to that half a sandwich, it just wasn't doing it.
Yeah,
and so I wound up having a sandwich and a half for lunch when I could have just had 2, and now I'm hungry.
Yeah, you're probably starving, actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but like I'm definitely. By the time I get home, I will be.
Yeah.
Back to the District of Columbia here from Ashburn, Virginia. What else did we? There was something really funny from one of the women's football podcasts over the weekend.
Mary Earps.
Yeah, Mary Earps, the England goalkeeper. I forget the story. I forget the setup. But this is just English people being funny. English footballers, in fact. These couple members of the English national soccer team.
All right, Mother. She's like, please come to my room quick. It was Tooney's birthday on camp. So me and Katie Zellum were like, well, we need to get Tooney out of her room so we can go into her room, put up banners, put up balloons. So we did that and we were like, Mary, we need you to distract Tooney to get her out of her room. Mary texted you, didn't she? No, she rang me and I thought, that's weird. Like, Mary never rings, never really rings. Never mind ringing me. So I'm like, all right, Mother. She's like, Tooney, please come to my room quick. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going on? But I ain't good with criers, by the way. I'm like, I'm coming, Mary, I'm coming. It's going to be all right. I don't know what's going on.
And in the meantime, we'd gone and got a key for Tooney's room. So we let ourselves into Tooney's room, started decorating, thinking this is all good.
So I get to the room, Mary. So I'm in here, I'm in here. And I'm like, right. So I go in the bathroom. And she's like in the bath. And she's like, I've got a back spasm, I can't get out of the bath. And I was like, oh, you want me to get you out? She's half hanging out the bath, and she's like, oh, and like falls back in, and I'm like, Mary, like, I'm like getting you out here, like, she's like, oh, don't worry, I'll stay here.
bearing in mind, I've been in the room for about 20 minutes now.
Mary's taken her performance to like.
Mary thought she was
serious.
winning an award.
Yeah.
She's like, don't worry, it's fine. I'll get out at some point. I'm like, all right, in a bit. So I'll leave, and then as I get back to my room, these two idiots jump out and are like, surprise.
I feel like there's a funny, we don't have enough time, Anthony, but I would like to know in your group, who is each of those characters in that story? I want you to ponder that, and perhaps we'll discuss it tomorrow. As for now, we are done. Again, a quick snippet of BetMGM tonight, and then coming up at 7:30, Mystics and Dream with Megan and Christy here on the Team 980. We'll see you tomorrow from Ashburn.